What's up, dads? Your boy Big Dave back with another episode of Culture Dad's Age of Sword and Cassette. What's up, Mr. Mike?
Yeah, I'm doing well, Dave. Doing very well. I'm actually getting a little bit sick, but I'm still I'm still mostly at the top of that hill. I haven't slid all the way down yet. So,
dude, yeah,
I'm firing on like 95% of my cylinders.
That's weird you say that. My kids are all sick now. They just got sick yesterday. So it's like, I don't know what's going on, but I was like, oh my goodness. Like for us, trick or treat's like in 3 days or something. If they're miserable sick during trick or treat, that's gonna be like the worst.
That's hell. Yeah, they don't want to miss that.
No.
I never let my kids miss out on Halloween. They're a little bit young for it, especially my youngest, and so they get a little bit scared. There's like here in Australia, there's like not Halloween isn't as much of a thing as it was back home, but there's still people who do it. There's like still enough people in the neighborhood. Like you got to drive around. Unfortunately, you can't just walk, or else there's not enough people. But if you drive around, then you'll get to enough houses, and there's some people that go way far with it. It's awesome. I always thank them and everything like that. Oh, it's great. They get like, they'll get like a big table set out on their driveway, and like they're out there giving out candy, and there's like they got like moving stuff on their lawn and everything like that. And the spooky music, and they just go all out. I'm just like, every time I'm like, thank you. you're the salt of the earth. This is exactly what my kids need. You know what I mean? So yeah.
That's not really an Australian thing. They kind of picked that up from us, didn't they?
Yeah, it's imported from America, I suppose. I mean, Canada, we have our own, like, well, I guess like for us, like Halloween and Thanksgiving are a little bit closer together. You guys have like Thanksgiving in late November or something, don't you?
Yeah.
For us, it's like closer. So, but yeah, Halloween is definitely a thing in Canada. I mean, when I was a kid, it's like you just go out trick or treating, and probably 2 out of every 3 houses is giving out candy and stuff like that. And I don't know what it's like now. I assume like everything, it's declined somewhat, but it was definitely a thing. Like even when I left or whatever. So it's a big deal for us. And I mean, living in a northern country, it's got that vibe, that unexplainable vibe that you don't even have to explain.
I used to, I don't know. It's not, I'm here in the States, right? And trick or treat is our thing. And I grew up in the Northeast where you can go to places where there's lots of little suburb communities and stuff that you see on, like, you see in the movies and stuff like that. And when I was a kid, it was very much like that. It was, everybody would dress up. Kids were everywhere. Every house was decorated. It was wholesome, but it was also kind of rowdy too, because you had what was called mischief night, where young guys, preteens, teenagers, or whatever, would just go out and trash the neighborhood, do vandalism, egg houses, toilet paper. They would go terrorize their teachers they didn't like, all kind of stuff. Right? It was just a night that you do bad kid shit. If you got nailed, that if you did some real damage, you might get a fine, and they would call your parents or whatever. But since I guess, I don't know, Columbine and 9/11 and all that horse shit, police like arrest the fuck out of kids. If you get caught they don't even do mischief night, because if young guys go out and do mischief night, they're gonna like give you fucking years of probation and fines. And
it's like you'll ruin your future or some bullshit like that.
Ruins your future. If you're 16 or older, 16, 17, they'll try you as an adult and they'll put you in county jail and stuff like that. It's really, really fucked up. Okay. So it's like, when I was a kid, the worst that would happen is the cops would chase you down, and they wouldn't beat you up, but they would rough you up. They'd tackle you real hard. They'd like grab you and smash you into the car, put cuffs on you and yell at you. And, they would rough you up and then take you to the station and then call your parents and scare the shit out of you and like all this kind of stuff. But that's what cops were supposed to do. Now they can't do that at all. Now it's like, you get nailed doing something like that, it's all over. But I'll tell you what, the vibe was cool though, because it was like, here's the deal: it was sort of like rites of passage. You would have older kids that would dress up and go out and terrorize the younger kids, and like, you know, I mean, they would go scare the shit out of them, steal their candy. You know, you wouldn't do it like if there's like little kids with their parents, but if you're old enough to go walk around on your own, you're like prey. You know what I mean? You better be ready to run from the big kids because they're gonna come fuck with you. And I'll tell you what another thing I noticed is that when I was younger, tons of houses, like grown people, would go out of their way to scare the shit out of people.
I remember this too. Yeah.
You would have grown men in weird costumes, like jumping out of bushes, just like trying to scare you. Houses where they would like jump out. And it was just like, it was. And I guess now it's like, you can't do that because you'll traumatize the children. And like all this like gay, it's just fucking gay, dude. Dude, my sons are 6 and 9. 6 and 9. And they watch movies with like the cartoons and that are fucking, I don't want to say gruesome, but they like scary shit. They like it. They like monsters and zombies, and they're telling me stories of monsters getting their heads cut off and eating their eyeballs out. And, you know, just like little boy stuff. Yeah. They can handle it. They're fine.
Yeah. I mean, my kids like that kind of stuff too. Not quite as much because they're girls, but, you know, they're always like, Dad, I want to watch, like, tell me what you used to watch when you were a kid. And I'd be like, okay, all right, let's put some stuff on for you, you know? And one of the things I put on for them is Ninja Turtles. And of course the missus is like, it's too much. It's violent. I'm like, it's fine. Come on.
Ninja Turtles. Come on.
It's fucking wholesome. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. But you know, those are good times. Good times.
Good times. Yeah. And I'm raising my kids to kind of like be in those times. My kids are sort of like 90s kids. Outside of they know about the internet and stuff like that. But my kids know how to like put in a cassette tape, and I mean, they're sort of like 90s kids, right? It was like, so last week when we did RoboCop, I was like, I'm watching I remember I watched RoboCop as a little kid. I loved it. I had there was RoboCop toys. Right? There was like RoboCop toys. I had RoboCop toys and I watched RoboCop. So I turned it on. I was like, there's a naked lady. There's people getting blown apart and stuff like that. I was like, and I'm watching it and I was like, oh man. I don't know if I let my son
maybe just a little bit much for kids, but yeah.
I turned out all right. I'm all right. I think it's good for you to be traumatized a little bit. So anyway, speaking of good old times, today we're going to talk about like Mike's. This is probably going to be Mike's favorite episode. This is his shit. We're going to talk about grunge rock, right? And Mike gave me a playlist of grunge rock to listen to. Now, historically, I hated grunge rock, right?
Really? I didn't know you hated it.
Okay. Oh, back in the day, I hated it because firstly, it was marketed as this killed metal. Metal is dead. Grunge is here. And like, it was like this kind of thing. And during that time, like, I was like, what do you mean fucking metal's dead? You know, Slayer just came out with an album. Metallica just came out with an album. Pantera's like at their peak. Like, how is metal dead? You know what I mean? And I guess it did a number on hair metal, right? But I guess I'm a little young to experience hair metal in its prime. Hair metal.
You didn't miss much. I'm sorry.
Yeah, but so okay. So hair metal. I remember the twilight of it. Like, it's like last breaths. Remember when these like monster ballads, right? They had Monster Ballads Volume 1. I remember you. Like the fucking. And also, I did hate hair metal too. I really, because I grew up. I don't want is it a dox, but I grew up in an area where the band Poison came from. So every single Gen Xer was Poison fan, especially the women, and we grew up like an hour away from Bon Jovi territory. So everybody loved Bon Jovi. Everybody loved Poison. And there's a few other bands that came out of this area, believe it or not, that people just like, fuck. Some of them were pretty good, but most of them were like Poison, who is like the worst, the gayest, hair metal band there was. But I'll tell you what's his name? Ricky Rocket or whatever, fucking jerk off. The drummer from Poison is actually apparently pretty based. He like went and bought a homestead, and he like I think he got kicked off of Twitter. So somebody told me, I don't know. He's kind of based, and he goes and he like has a farm and builds handcrafted drums, and so maybe they're not all completely gay, but his music was gay as fuck. I don't know if you guys remember the OG like Poison album, like what was that called? The Cat drug me in or whatever the fuck. That album, they looked like girls. It was so gay. So looking back, hair metal, and I'm gonna pass over to Mike. I'm not gonna sit here and yak all day, but looking back on hair metal, I used to think, man, this is poser shit. That's so gay. I'm so glad that it's dead. Thrash metal, death metal, black metal, like this is the real shit. And then these guys are a bunch of and they were a bunch of but I'll tell you what. Looking back, there's been a couple times like a Motley Crue video popped up or something, and I was like, you know what? It wasn't that bad. Compared to what's going on now, I'll take Motley Crue. I'll take Motley Crue over fucking whatever garbage is out there now. So anyway, I hated grunge because it got marketed as that, and other reasons. Kurt Cobain got really, really jerked off after he died. It was like one of those things, and I was just like, I'm not a fan of Nirvana. I had both a friend and an uncle that were obsessive Pearl Jam fans, so I've heard every fucking Pearl Jam song, and they just all sound the exact same. And oh my god, Pearl Jam is the worst. So it's just like grunge was, and I also felt that it was kind of like pretentious too. It was like we're so edgy and fucking we don't care and we're aloof and all this kind of shit. It was kind of ironic or something like that. And I'm not saying that that's what it was, but that was my perception of it at the time. Since then, I did, but here's the deal, Mike, is I had a couple, like I had Stone Temple Pilots Core, which even during the time when I was hating on grunge, I always thought that was a tremendous album.
That was undeniable.
Yeah, I've always liked Alice in Chains. I've always liked Soundgarden. There's a few bands that I think that like, despite my hate for it, I listened to. So I listened to your playlist, and we'll talk about it. So I'm going to pass it over to you before I keep yakking and yakking. Tell us about it.
All right. So yeah, I mean the playlist, which I will put into the show notes for anybody that's listening to this to be able to check it out. The playlist that I gave to Dave, like I know what Dave likes in general. I have a good idea of like what his tastes are and that kind of thing. I wanted to give him something that he would like. You know what I mean? But at the same time, I also wanted to give him some things that are like historically significant as well. So it's a kind of blend between those. So I was basically like leaning a little bit more to the metal side of grunge in general. But yeah, before we talk about like the actual content of the playlist and the songs and that I chose and everything, I think it's worth sketching out a little bit of the background of grunge because it was a significant moment in musical history. It's one of the most significant moments in rock history, really. So I think it's worth understanding it from a historical level. It's kind of hard to say when it begins, but some of the roots of it lie in punk rock. So I mean, everybody's heard grunge. I don't have to describe it, but it's really, in a nutshell, the heaviness of metal meets the attitude of punk. It's stripped down and simplified. That's kind of a thumbnail description of it, I would say. But it kind of starts, the spirit of it kind of starts, back in the early 80s when the punk touring circuit was really happening. So in the 70s, in the late 70s and early 80s, or before then, kind of coming up to the late 70s, there wasn't very much going on for underground musicians. There was a few different like clubs that you could play in like the big cities, things like CBGB's in New York and like some clubs in LA and things like that. And these are like, you know, some of them were quite legendary, but there really wasn't a lot of places to play for bands who were just like up and coming and wanted to do something different. You know, not like be REO Speedwagon or Boston or something like that. You know, I'm nothing against Boston. They're a good band and everything, but you know, if you wanted to do something different, there was basically like not much going on. And then punk exploded, and sort of in the wake of that, this touring circuit kind of opened up, where all of a sudden you had like young kids all across the United States, that were doing things like playing in, you know, venues that they would like rent out themselves. They would be playing in like people's, in like house parties and things like that, or like renting out, you know, warehouses and things or whatever. They would just be like, it was the birth of DIY, the do-it-yourself ethos, where it was just like, you know, young kids, like kids in their like teens and 20s, like doing it for themselves and setting up venues and like, you know, promoting things and like letting bands sleep on their couch and like all this kind of stuff, like setting up logistical chains to allow these things to happen. It was quite remarkable, actually. I mean, whatever you think about the music, these people were really dedicated. So what happened in the early to mid 80s was that a touring circuit was kind of set up where if you wanted to go, if you were a band from San Diego, say, and you wanted to go up through, you know, into California and then like, you know, tour across the Midwest and then make it to DC and then finally to New York, there was actually like a feasible way you could do that, right? There was like, you could, you know, play at this venue in this city and then like hop onto the next one and then sleep on this guy's couch and like, you know, stay here or whatever. There was like, you know, if you knew people, if you knew some of the folks in the scene or whatever at different like cities, then you could make a go of it basically without being Led Zeppelin or something, you know what I mean? So this, it's sort of like was the birth of independent music, really. I mean, that's kind of when it started in earnest. And right around the same time, in the mid 80s, there was the birth of what we now call college rock. So this is independent rock that was like not, it wasn't punk. I mean, it didn't have the aggression and speed or loudness of punk, but it had the underground and independent sort of ethos, the DIY ethos. But it was sort of more aiming at like, you know, tuneful kind of music, like the kind of stuff that you'd hear on the radio, but, you know, without being a top 40 band or whatever. So we're talking about bands like REM, like The Replacements, like Husker Du, and like some of these bands later became, you know, quite well known and everything like that. But initially it was an underground phenomenon, and a lot of it was played only really on like underground college, like rock stations or music stations, you know, places where it was like experimental and didn't have to really, I mean, there was like run by radio DJs that were students, didn't really have to meet like a budget or like, you know, involving in payola or any of the bullshit that goes along with the music industry. So there was like some interesting stuff that came out of that. It was a new kind of sound that started brewing in the 1980s, underground. And what this really led to over the course of a number of years was a little sort of federation of independent scenes in like different cities. So you'd go to, well, maybe not LA, you'd go to whatever. You'd go to some smaller, like, you know, California city or whatever. And there would be like a local scene there. There'd be like a certain number of bands that are like, you know, playing punk, and then some of them are playing sort of like jangly indie rock, and others are playing like, you know, weird stuff or whatever. And there was like a little scene there, and then there'd be one in Minneapolis, and then there'd be one in, you know, Portland, and then there'd be one in all of these different cities, like even like, you know, not huge cities, but sort of like mid-size urban centers, they each kind of had this like little insular, it was like this little island of like its own thing. And each of them started to develop kind of like a local flavor that was just like its own thing, right? Each city was kind of a little world unto itself. And I mean, this really, I don't know how much this influenced me later in my like love of like localism and particularity and being from a place and things like that. But, you know, it probably had something to do with it, because you could see, like, you know, if you looked at like the scene in Athens, Georgia or whatever, which is this like renowned indie rock scene in the 1980s, it was not the same as the indie rock scene coming out of Seattle or coming out of like all these different, like, you know, DC or like different like urban centers. They were each kind of like a little country that had its own language, its own traditions, its own, you know, cuisine and things like that. So that was really cool. I mean, I love this era of music for that, because you could just kind of like go and it's like sampling things from like all across the world or whatever. It's like each scene was a little bit different. So this was kind of a special time in music history. And with the advent of cassette tape and mass production of cheap instruments, which kind of like started especially in the 1980s, all of a sudden the everyman could play, right? Like garage bands absolutely exploded over the course of this time. Any man, every you know, kid and his cousin could have a garage band. And what this led to was this explosion of creativity throughout the 1980s. Now, it was super amateurish, and a lot of it was terrible. But occasionally you'd get these like gems, these like amazing bands that were just sort of like one of a kind, like nothing sounds like them kind of thing. I mean, so many examples you could give. Think of the band like Primus. I mean, that we're talking about like later in the 80s or whatever when they came around. But like that's still a band that like nobody sounds like. You know, there was tons and tons of bands just like that. Like, you know, I gave Dave a couple of them on the post-punk episode, like Sonic Youth and Big Black and all these like crazy bands. Like if you want to read a good book about this time, there's a book called Our Band Could Be Your Life. That just describes this whole world. It was quite an interesting time in music. So as the 80s wear on, punk rock starts to basically die because it sort of had exhausted. I mean, punk rock as a musical form does not admit of a ton of innovation. In some ways, I mean, if you innovate too much, you basically like, you know, piss off the punk rockers and start doing something completely different. And this is actually what happened for a band named Black Flag, which is a super influential punk band out of LA. They had a number of different singers, but they were like one of these bands that were instrumental in establishing this touring circuit. And probably their most famous singer is Henry Rollins. And during the Henry Rollins era, you know, in about 1984, 5 or whatever, I mean, he joined in, I think, 81 or something like that. And they were like a hardcore band. But at some stage, what happened was they decided to do something completely different and to basically give the middle finger to their punk audience. And so they grew out their hair and they started playing, instead of like really fast, like, you know, 250 beats per minute, like punk rock, they slowed everything down to a crawl. And there was actually this one album that they released called My War, where the first half was like regular punk fare, you know, like fast and heavy and aggressive or whatever. And the second side, but the B side of this record was all like these dirgy, slow, sludgy. It was like punk rock meets Black Sabbath or something like that, where they slowed everything down and their audience fucking hated it. It's like they totally rejected this. They completely rejected this, you know, style, this new style that Black Flag had developed. And so you know, they basically like went on and that was sort of like the beginning of the end for the band or whatever. But they went on to do interesting things. Henry Rollins went on to start his own band and everything like that. But and it pissed off all the punks except for a few. There was like a few people who were like into punk rock that like listened to this My War album with like the sludgy B-side and were like, this is a fucking revelation, dude. Oh my God. Like what is this stuff? You know what I mean? So one of those bands that heard that was like, this is really something, was a band called the Melvins, who were a band out of Aberdeen, Washington, a smaller city, sort of, I'm not sure geographically where, but it's close to Seattle. And this was a revelation for the Melvins. They had been like a hardcore punk band that was like the fastest punk band in Seattle and super aggressive and everything, just like a regular punk band basically. And then they heard this album and were like, okay, this is a whole new sound. And so they decided to slow everything down and, just play super, super heavy. It's like, you could describe them, I think, as like Black Sabbath, but like slowed down to like a quarter speed or something like that. And Seattle, which is like, when the Melvins would play, I mean, they would play in Seattle, right? Because that was the big place to go to. And that's where they had like punk rock venues and places that would let you play and stuff. Like if you wanted to play in Aberdeen, you'd be expected to play blues covers and stuff like that. So they'd have to go to Seattle. But Seattle was an interesting, well-placed city for a cool scene to develop because Seattle it's a big urban area, but it's kind of isolated. When bands would come to the US and go on a tour, very often they would skip Seattle because it was so far out of the way. They would just do, they'd go up the west coast and then they would basically say, you know what, fuck it. We're not going to go all the way up there for one date. So we'll just continue on through whatever. They go to Las Vegas or something like that, then keep going eastward. And Seattle very often got missed. So there was a real sort of, there was a real hunger for like cool music there that like wasn't filled and from a very large urban area sort of thing. So in this little scene in Seattle, and we're talking about 1985, 6 or 7 or so, there was some new bands started to pop up. There was one very important band called Green River, and this is a band that very consciously and clearly sort of mixed the punk and the metal ethos. They were really a kind of schizophrenic mash between 70s arena rock ambitions with like a bit of glam sort of thrown in for good measure, but also had like heavy like metal roots with like some punk attitude and everything like that. So this band was really influential, but they eventually kind of split because there was really sort of two halves of the band. One half wanted to go in the punk metal direction. The other wanted to go in the 70s arena rock direction. And they eventually split into two bands, one by the name of Mudhoney, which is kind of the one that went in the punk direction, and another one called Mother Love Bone, which was more of a glam type group or whatever. So the singer went to Mudhoney, and the other half of the band picked up a new singer by the name of Andrew Wood, and they became Mother Love Bone. And this guy was a real sort of like real rock star kind of personality. Well, we'll talk about him a little bit later. So that was, a couple of the bands that were floating around at the time. Another one that started that we all know about today is Soundgarden, which was again, very influenced by the Melvins. The Melvins influenced everybody in Seattle. They basically sort of taught them how to do shit, like to make it heavy, basically. And Soundgarden was this weird band. They continue to be weird all the way through their career, but they would play with like weird time signatures and really sort of dark kind of tonalities and everything like that. But then they slowed it way down and kind of became the band that, they did sort of like, smooth it out a little bit later on, but they were really heavy as fuck in the beginning. And of course, Chris Cornell with his vocals, this guy's just got a completely off the hook voice. They started to gain a a real following and started to gain some real attention quite early. One of the landmarks in the scene that happened in, I believe, 1986 was some of these bands that I'm talking about here got put onto a compilation called Deep Six, which was really kind of a document of what was going on at the time. And that really started to gain some, put some eyes on Seattle because, it still holds up. Actually, there's some really great tracks on that compilation that still hold up today. After Deep Six comes out in, I think, 1986 or whatever, you start to get a slightly new wave of bands. Again, Mudhoney is one of them. Nirvana forms in, I think, 1987 or so. And they're not what they would become, but they were like this really dissonant, weird-ass punk band and everything. We'll talk about Nirvana, obviously. But there was a really cool scene developing, and it started to get a little bit of attention. And then these couple of guys by the name of Bruce Pavitt and Jonathan Poneman started a label that was really started scooping up the best talent of the scene. A lot of the great talent went to this label called Sub Pop. And Sub Pop was really a stroke of marketing genius. These guys really knew what the fuck they were doing because they created a very uniform kind of aesthetic for their releases. Like if you bought a Sub Pop record, it's like you knew it was Sub Pop just by looking at it because it had the same vibe, it had the same kind of like photography, it had the same fonts and everything. It had the same producer. Like, so they were actually they were doing some pretty cool stuff. It was almost like a little indie version of like the Motown label in Detroit in the 1960s, where you would have uniform packaging, the same producer, the same kind of rough sound and everything like that. And they also, Sub Pop was great at creating like a mystique around their bands and sloganeering, and just, they really were ahead of their time sort of thing. So they started to create a buzz quite quickly, and they flew in this like journalist from the UK by the name of Everett True. I think he worked for the Melody Maker, and he did a write-up on Seattle. And he basically posed it as like this like lumberjack logging town with all these like crazy bands that just like were awesome or whatever. And they actually started to get quite a big buzz in the UK. So a lot of the bands actually went over to the UK and did some touring and things like that. And of course, once anywhere outside of your little town starts to take notice, all of a sudden, the local boys that have been completely ignored start to become heroes or whatever. So like, the local scene, the local, music publications started to write a lot more about Seattle and pay attention to the bands and everything like that. About this time, we're talking about 89 or so, Alice in Chains forms, and they are initially a like GNR, straight up, like actually really more like Poison. They were like a hair metal band or whatever. Somehow through one of the most whiplash evolutions of any band I've ever seen, they very quickly became pretty much what they would be in their classic era, like over the course of a few months or whatever. So they put out I think it was like a demo tape or something like that. But then they got signed. They got signed to a major label. Soundgarden by this time had been signed to a major label. Nirvana had released their first album, Bleach. They got signed. All these bands started to get signed in like the late 80s or whatever, including Mother Love Bone, this sort of like glam type band or whatever that was like a linchpin of the scene. And I forget what month it was, but like sometime in 1990, just as Mother Love Bone is about to release their first album, the singer from that band ends up overdosing on heroin just a couple of days before their first album comes out. And it was a total blow to everybody in the scene because this guy was really well loved. He was a talented musician, but he was also like the larger than life personality. He was like this huge like rock star personality, and not like an asshole, but just a natural born extrovert entertainer guy.
Wait, who are we talking about again?
His name's Andrew Wood, the singer for Mother Love Bone.
Oh, okay.
So he overdoses on heroin, and it really puts like a damper on the scene, right? And like everybody's depressed, and they're just like, "Fuck, like this is terrible" or whatever. And the guys from Mother Love Bone, the members that are still there, along with Chris Cornell from Soundgarden, who was Andrew Wood's roommate, really close to him, like they're grieving, right? And it's sort of like as a kind of therapy, they start writing songs together, and it becomes this record called Temple of the Dog, with it eventually ends up like releasing the album that was written sort of like as a tribute to Andrew Wood, and it has a very, very famous song that most people have probably heard this tune. It's called Hunger Strike. And so that comes out in about 1990. Soundgarden releases their major label debut, well, in 89, but close to 90. Nirvana is like about to go into the studio to record their first album. Alice in Chains' album, A Facelift, drops in 1990 and has a surprise like college hit with Men in the Box. And so like things are starting to happen in Seattle. It's starting to look like one of the hotter like indie scenes in the United States. And then of course, as is well known in rock history, on September 24th, 1991, Nirvana releases Nevermind, this band that like everyone was like, we will be, if they sell 100,000 records, that's going to be like a smash success for these guys, right? You know what I mean? The label was like, yeah, they might do 100,000 because they listened to it before it came out, obviously, and they were like, this is a good record. So, they might do as well as Sonic Youth. Sonic Youth put an album out in 1990 called Goo. It did about 100,000 records or so. We expect Nirvana might get that many. You know what I mean? And of course, Smells Like Teen Spirit was released as a single. The video came out. It became a smash success. It just like absolutely obliterated everything on the charts. There was like a point in time where like Nirvana, this band that like nobody really knew outside of Seattle, displaced Michael Jackson at the number 1 spot on the like Billboard Top 100, and like was like completely stomping everything left, right, and center. It's like Madonna cut down, Michael Jackson cut down, fucking Poison and Motley Crue toast, and it was like this juggernaut that was just crushing everything on the horizon. And from that, at that point, I forgot to mention Mother Love Bone ended up like the people who were left over like after the singer died got together with this guy by the name of Eddie Vedder, and Mother Love Bone became Pearl Jam. Pearl Jam released their album in 1991. That became a smash success too. Soundgarden, 1991, Bad Motorfinger. That was a really big success. Not quite as big as Nirvana and Pearl Jam, but still really fucking good. And 1992, Alice in Chains' Dirt. Like by 1992, it was like grunge was everywhere. Completely had saturated everything. It even really had sort of like overshadowed hip hop, which is quite a feat in the early 90s. You know what I'm talking about? So
was hip hop really that popular in the 90s though?
It was pretty popular, man. I mean, like, think of stuff like Vanilla Ice, and there was so many like, I mean, hip hop as well as like dance, like, you're talking like CNC Music Factory and shit like that,
Digital
that
Underground.
Yeah. So, I mean, hip hop was big business back then, but grunge kind of came in like a shot out of nowhere and just like overshadowed everything. And of course, it flamed out pretty quickly. That's a whole story in itself. But I just kind of wanted to get us to that point in music history where there was this changing of the guard that really did not have any analog that happened before. I mean, maybe with the beginnings of rock and roll, like that level of revolution was going on at this point in time. So yeah, I figured that's a good point to get us to, and then I'll get your thoughts, Dave.
Yeah, and also you didn't. One thing I would want to throw in there is the influence that doom metal had on grunge. You know, like what was it? I can't remember if it was Soundgarden or Alice in Chains. One of them was literally Queens of the Stone Age. These were literally desert rock bands.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Doom metal was huge. I mean, I did sort of like skip over that. A lot of the bands, like there was a kind of, I forget who, there was a couple of bands that described them this way, that describe themselves as like Black Flag meets Black Sabbath, right? Like that was, so they had the heaviness, they had the punk attitude, they had the do-it-yourself attitude, they had the like, let's simplify shit, let's like fuck the guitar solo. I mean, not entirely, but like less guitar solos, less flashy playing and everything like that. That's the punk ethos coming through. But also there was the heaviness of like, you know, Black Sabbath and like Led Zeppelin. Like if you listen to early Soundgarden, it really does kind of sound like 90s Led Zeppelin or 80s Led Zeppelin done like to the nines, you know what I mean? So these like heavy riff rock sort of bands from the 1970s, early metal like Blue Cheer and all of that stuff, Deep Purple, like these were huge influences on these guys, and they always paid respect to metal bands, right? To me, it sounds like the sound of grunge is like an evolution of metal. To me, it's actually sort of a subgenre of metal. I'm not sure if this was something that was talked about on the Metal Headbangers Journey documentary. I think it might have been. I think the guy might have actually included grunge in the family tree of like metal or something like that. But I think it belongs there because it's a huge influence on them.
Yeah, I would say especially certain bands. Certain bands definitely go into that. And you know, I guess we can go into your list in a minute, but I did want to bring up, speaking of the influences on some of these grunge guys, you know, I did some digging on some of these bands. Like, for example, Melvins, right? Melvins is such a huge part of grunge. I go look it up. Apparently, I already knew this. The guy from Melvins is, he's a big shot. His name is Buzz Osborne. He's considered like one of the OGs of grunge, and in the metal scene too. He's got some. This guy is so into classic rock and old metal and all these. He is a true music head. This guy is a culture dad, right?
Yeah.
So he's like into all this kind of stuff. He's a gearhead. You see this guy on all these videos talking about all his different tone. He's a tone hunter. He was influential on the scene in more ways than just how he wrote songs. He's the first guy to use the Sun Beta lead head, which was a shitty solid state head that nobody used back then, and nobody even used it. It didn't even get popular again until like recently with a lot of some of the doom stuff that's coming up. I had one and I sold it for $50. Like that's how it was like given to me. It was just like somebody had it in their shed and they're like, yo, you can have this, because my amp blew out. And because it's a lot of the times, and especially in metal, and especially back in the 80s, from the 70s going into the 80s, it was tubes or nothing. You got to run a tube amp. You got to run a big, strong, powerful tube amp. And Buzz Osborne's like, I'm going to try something a little bit different. So he'd use the Sun Beta lead. And that's what Kurt Cobain and a lot of other grunge guys started to use, was that Sun Beta lead head. Another thing with this Melvins guy, Buzz Osborne, he's such like a fan of old school stuff. You can go find it. He did he was on a Kiss tribute album and sung the vocals for God of Thunder.
Yeah. I mean, they covered a Kiss song on their Houdini album in 1993.
What song?
Going Blind.
So this guy,
I should have given you that one. Listen to it.
This guy was an OG. Buzz Osborne is an OG with as far as tone, as far as technique, as far as what he brought to the table and all this kind of stuff. So listening to it. So here's like my thing. I appreciate Melvins. When I listen to it, they got great guitar tone. It sounds good. Yeah, I could listen to it. I have no critiques of it. I just wish they like wrote some songs. You know, I mean, they're kind of Melvins sort of remind me. They're like the Sleep of grunge. They kind of do a lot of they were more about creating mood and atmosphere, although it is a lot of it's like heavy and sludgy and a little bit more aggressive than something like Sleep. And so it's actually Matt Pike from Sleep actually says that Buzz Osborne is one of his influences. So there's no surprise there, but that's kind of what they remind me of, is like a Sleep type band. In Melvins, they're kind of this very I don't know. They're very influential. They're kind of like a point of creation where they sort of like revolutionize things in a different way and reordered things in a different way, and that went on to influence fucking everybody. But you know, you're real big grunge fans. If you go to a guy that's like a big Pearl Jam guy and ask him if he likes Melvins, he might not even have heard of them. You know what I mean? So that's but listening to the music, I like it, but this is what a lot of grunge does to me, right? And like hair metal, I've gone back and I've looked at grunge now that I'm older and I'm over the you know, I'm a metalhead and that's all I'm allowed to like, and fuck everything else that even is like rival to it. I've got an appreciation for it. You know, a lot of it is good. You know, I look back on hair metal and I'm like, you know what? There was a couple guys that weren't that bad. You know what I mean? Queensryche was fantastic. Freaking Van Halen. You can't deny Van Halen. You know what I mean?
Would you consider them a hair metal band?
Yeah, I would consider them a hair metal band. I would.
All right, there's a hair metal band that I like then.
Yeah. You don't like Queensryche?
They're okay. I don't hate him, but I don't know. Something about the singer. He doesn't do it for me.
He's like the best singer. He's like an angelic talent, like top 1% greatest singers of all time.
I don't know what it is.
That's so weird. Yeah, I kind of like Queensryche except for the singer. That's weird. So anyway, Melvins, and what a lot of grunge does for me is like it kind of gets me to the point of delivering the things that I like about metal, but never takes it to where I want it to go. It's like a dick tease. You know what I mean? It's like so it's like I like it, it's cool, but it's like it doesn't like slap for me, if that makes sense. But you know, I respect it. I definitely respect it. The guy's got great tone. Oh my goodness. And you go and you look at this guy in a time where everybody was playing the new hot thing, the super strats and the pointy guitars and the V's with the hot pickups and the two ripping tube amps, the hot rodded, like high output, high gain stuff. This guy's like, I'm going to play a fucking Les Paul through a solid state amp with a huge pedal board. Like I'm gonna run a million fuzz pedals and effects pedals and all this shit so I can get this perfect tone through these like vintage kinds of gear. And I respect the shit out of that. I think that's fantastic. These two songs, Honey Bucket and Joan of Arc, that you gave me, I liked Honey Bucket a little bit better than Joan of Arc. Both pretty cool songs. I wish they would actually like have a little bit of more vocal structure, like a verse and a chorus or something like that. You know, it's still good though. Still good.
That's one of the things about the Melvins. And I mean, I understand why, Big Dave was going to have a little bit of trouble with them, because they are too experimental. And I actually gave you some of the songs that are like more conventional or whatever. There was a song later in the playlist that's more classic Melvin style, which is fucking weird. But they still, like, everything that they do is a little bit off kilter. And that's actually like, that's why they're so influential. But at the same time, it's also why they never made it, obviously. They're a little bit too much for a big audience.
So moving on, you gave me two Nirvana songs, and I'm going to tell you, and you're going to hate this, Mike, but I'm just going to be honest with you. These are my least favorite songs on the entire list. Oh yeah, especially the first one, School, is like, it was. I listened to it the whole way through. It's only a 2.5 minute song. It was a struggle for me to get through that song.
Wow.
Yeah. Oh my God. I think Nirvana and I'm like, I don't. So for me, it's like, how the hell did Nirvana even get popular? In my book, they're like the worst of the grunge bands. I don't like the vocals. I think the guitar riffs are poop. I think that the tone is scratchy and thin. I think the drums are just like scattered. I don't I don't understand like what he's talking about with and I don't really care. So with lyrics, I'm completely open to lyrics that are implied or poetic or whatever. But I just don't know what the fuck he's getting at. I think it's kind of just like nuts. And on top of everything, I just don't. So I watched the Kurt Cobain, or one of the Kurt Cobain documentaries. And what sticks in my head, a memory from that documentary, was when his first baby was born and he's all high on dope. He's a heroin addict and he's holding his baby. And I can't remember if it was Courtney Love, who's a rotten slut, rotten, disgusting whore, or somebody else in the room had to grab the baby because he was nodding out. And it was like, I lost a lot of friends to heroin. I'm from an area that got absolutely ravaged by the opioid crisis, and seeing that just like makes me hate him. You know what I mean? It's like, you had all this money and all this opportunity and all this success, and you fucking did dope. You had a baby, you had it all. You had the world, and you fucking, just were a dope head. And just, and it's part of me is, I also, I'm going to shit all over Kurt Cobain, Mike. I'm sorry. I know he's your boy and you like him and everything like that. I'm just going to be, this is just from my heart. I'm just what I'm thinking. I sort of halfway blame Kurt Cobain for the popularization of heroin and also of shitty guitar playing. There was like a whole era after Kurt Cobain where guys stopped trying to be good guitar players. And there were tons and tons of local bands trying to sound like them, and they were all fucking terrible. And I don't know. I just do not fucking like Nirvana. I think that they're compared to a band like Alice in Chains, who are just tremendous, or even the Melvins, who are so influential and dope in their own way. I don't get it. I don't get, my personal feelings and biases aside, just the sound. I don't get it.
Yeah, well, I mean, so it's utterly futile to try to argue somebody into liking something. You know what I mean? So that's not what I would want to do or anything at all. But the reason why Nirvana got so big, so the songs that I gave to Dave, the first one's called "School." It's from their Bleach album. It's really elemental, stripped down fucking rocks. It really sounds like a metal song to me. And the other one is Scentless Apprentice from In Utero, which is like the album where they were so they had a lot of success with Nevermind. It was like a big pop chart success, and so many of the songs fucking did very, very well on the radio. And then In Utero was that album where they were like, fuck the audience, we don't like the people who have latched on to Nirvana or whatever, and we're going to alienate the audience kind of thing, which in some ways is kind of gay. In some ways I understand it, but anyway, this song from In Utero is one of the heaviest, most garagey, noisy songs. So it's one of the most abrasive tracks off that most abrasive album that they did or whatever. I just wanted to give Dave one of the real sort of extremity, extreme points of grunge. Basically what it is it's noise rock. It's almost not grunge anymore. It's noise rock. But anyway, to kind of go into what was it about Nirvana that people liked?
Tell me why I'm wrong. Tell me why I'm wrong too.
About which? About Nirvana or?
Yeah, about my assessment of Nirvana.
All right. So, I mean, as far as as a guitar player, I can't fault you in your assessment. As a father, I certainly can't fault you about your assessment of Kurt Cobain. I mean, that is shitty, and there's no way to redeem that at all. but musically, in terms of like what it was that they were doing, Nirvana was just like, it's the kind of, so when you write a song, as far as I'm concerned, when you write a song, you know it's a good song if you could play it on a piano, if you could play it on a fucking ukulele, if you could play it on like a thumb piano or something like that, and have the song still hold up, have it like still carry a tune, have it still have like hooks that are like interesting and good. Now, putting aside all lyrics, because some of Kurt Cobain's, I don't mind his lyrics, but some people really hate them. Even putting that aside, just like taking it as a pure like musical composition, like if you were to arrange it instrumentally on some other, orchestrally or something like that. The hooks that this guy comes up with are almost inhumanly catchy. Every song on Nevermind is like a masterpiece of like hooky rock music. I don't know how to describe it, but it's like just the note choices that this guy makes, and the sort of syncopation of like the way that the melody, the vocal melody sort of links up with the guitar riff, but they're not quite the same. And it was like when you sort of like when you analyze these things from like a music theory perspective, it's really like it's up there with anything by the Beatles. It's up there with like anything by Queen. I mean, Queen was obviously more complicated and had more like, impressive arrangements and everything like that. But just as a song that you could like sit down and play on a guitar by yourself, these songs really hold up. It's like, a lot of times what I do is I sit down with my kids and I will just like grab the guitar, and dad will sit down and play for 30 songs or something like that. This is actually one of the things I did as my prep for this episode is I sat down, I played a bunch of these songs, or a bunch of like the classic grunge songs for them or whatever. And it's like, I can tell that the song is good when they kind of perk up when they hear it. And every time they hear a Nirvana song, they do perk up and they sort of pay attention. And there was one time, a couple weeks ago, I was like shopping for a birthday present for the wife. And my eldest, she heard this song on the radio, and she's like, "That's your song, Dad. I love this song," And it was "Come As You Are," which is a song I play for them all the time on the guitar. So one of the things about Nirvana, and they even said this in interviews, is that a lot of what their songs are or sound like, and in some cases were actually consciously modeled on, is like the kind of songs that like children would like sing on like in the playground or whatever. It's like a children's song, but arranged with like heavy ass guitar and like bleak lyrics and screaming and stuff like that. Like one of the riff that the one song that I sent you, Scentless Apprentice, you ever heard that like that song that like kids sing that goes like, you'll choose a name or whatever, you go like Dave Bo Babe Banana Nana Bo Babe or whatever, or like Mike Bo Bike Banana. That's the exact riff that they play during Scentless Apprentice. Da 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 da. Like they just copied that fucking like children's song, right? And made that into a fucking song. So there's something about these songs that like stick in your head at a level that is like below the threshold of consciousness at a sort of like, it's just like everybody gets it instantly. Well, not everybody, but I mean like a mass audience like hears this stuff and they understand it. They don't even have to grasp it. It's just like instantly kind of sticks and makes sense for them. So that's my best attempt at explaining what the appeal of Nirvana is. They just had really good like tune smithing, really good songcraft. Actually, I heard the track that High Wraith recently put out as a tribute to her recently deceased husband Jeff, and I heard it. And I'm like, that sounds like a Nirvana song to me. It really does. And I loved it. I think that's actually one of her best songs. So anyway, and I know she's influenced by Nirvana quite a lot. So anyway, this is all just to say that if you sit down with a guitar and like 3 chords and you play a catchy song, I mean, Nirvana is one of the best bands at doing that. So I think that's where they appeal. Now, there's a lot of stuff that like people hate about them. They hate the sort of like scratchy vocal. They might hate the lyrics, which are obviously really sort of dour and depressed or whatever. But when you strip all that stuff away and you just leave the instrumental aspect of it, I think that Nirvana really stands up to pretty much any band out there. So anyway, that's my take on Nirvana.
Yeah, just Nirvana sounds like heroin to me. Sorry.
Yeah.
So going on, now that I shit all over like your favorite shit ever, let's go to something that I think is dope, which is you gave me some Alice in Chains songs. Did you know these songs? Had you heard them before? Let me see which ones. You gave me Ain't Like That, Dirt. I've heard Dirt. Everybody's heard Dirt, I think. And there's another one in here, I thought.
We Die Young. I put a few in later in the playlist.
Yeah. I think I've heard a couple of them. I know I've heard some of them. Dude, Alice in Chains fucks. Alice in Chains was a fantastic band. Great riffs, great song. The singer is just so. I know the Yarlar thing is a meme and everybody makes fun of it and stuff like that, but I kind of like it. It's
really. That's funny.
I like some of them. So
I don't hate it either. I obviously I like this genre or whatever. I don't hate it, but that is the one thing that people hate the most about grunge is the yes sir, yeah. And look, Lane Staley is like one of the classic Yarlers. He's got like a serious Yarl on him,
Hell yeah. But he's Lane Staley's the singer from Alice in Chains, right?
Right.
Yeah. His range is fantastic. He's got great power up in the highs. He's got a lot of flexibility. This guy is a vocal talent. This guy was really, really a good singer and could have been in any era and be good, right? So these guys, who is their guitar player? Jerry Cantrell. Yeah. Jerry Cantrell is another guy who was I think he might have followed suit from Buzz Osborne or whatever, but he was another guy that was really big on tone and sound. And, if you go look at his gear lineup, this guy was running all these different Les Pauls. He had guitars with P90s in them. He had all these different pedals and all this. He was a gearhead. He was a tone head. So that goes into Alice in Chains' whole vibe. Is they're not just their songs that are really, really catchy or they're like really power frontman guy, but also their atmosphere and their sound, the texture of their sound, their sonic aesthetic is really shaped by Jerry Cantrell and how he makes the whole thing sound. And that's why I think you might have said Alice in Chains was Alice in Chains is sort of like you said, they're almost like you took a 70s rock band, put them in the 90s after metal happened, right? And that's what happened. So it's like, I don't know. I think Alice in Chains, in my opinion, might be the best grunge band. They might be the best grunge band, in my opinion.
They were my favorite back when that was all happening. I was the hugest fucking Alice in Chains fan. I was obsessed with these guys. Like, I remember, when the third album came out, they only put out 3 full-length albums. So, I mean, they were not a prolific band. So it was like hard to give you something that you probably hadn't heard because there's only those 3. They had a few EPs too. But when the third album came out after Dirt, and it was like I loved it because I was just obsessed with these guys, but it was a real downturn for them because like Lane Staley was just a complete mess, just a heroin fucking pool of like whatever, he was just completely dissolved at that point and he was just barely hanging on. I remember I loved them so much. I wanted to find a way to like write a letter to this guy and be like, I love your music so much. You've like changed my life completely. Please don't die. For yourself, like you've done so much for me. I mean, I what can I say to you to like turn you around kind of thing. I was so obsessed with these guys like back in the day. And actually I was like, known as like the grunge guy, even back in the 90s. Like I was known as the guy who was like seriously into this genre. And I had a lot of friends who were into like lots of different stuff. Like I had some guys who were into like hippie jam bands. I had some friends that were into like a lot of friends that were into classic rock. And I had one friend who was like a huge like Pink Floyd fan and liked a lot of the stuff from that era. And he would always like, him and I would always give each other shit. And then he'd be like, Alice in Chains fucking sucks. And I'd be like, fuck Pink Floyd, bunch of like whatever, even though I didn't hate Pink Floyd.
Yeah.
So yeah, this went on for many years or whatever. It's a good friend of mine. So, and then like I moved to Australia, and then actually this wasn't after I moved to Australia, but I moved like way far away from my hometown. And then I came back one year. This would have been like fucking 10 or 15 years after that, all that shit. And he's like, dude, I've got a song I want to play for you. Gotta hear this. I'm like, okay, sweet. And he puts on Man in the Box. He's like, Alice in Chains still fucking sucks. But he's like, he loves this band now, right? He's like, he finally got it. And it was a big sort of like bro hug moment for the two of us, right? Where it was just like, he finally got it. What Lane Staley is, I see Lane Staley and also Chris Cornell in the same way as like some of the ultimate blues singer. You know what I mean? They've got that soul, they've got that rasp, they've got that range. They're kind of doing a lot of what like Robert Plant is doing, but like in their own idiom. Like Lane Staley to me sounds like if you listen to this track, the track is called Dirt and it's from the album Dirt. That song sounds to me like he sounds like the undead. I don't know why. He sounds like a fucking Draugr come back from the undead. And it's like there's something unearthly about the tone in his voice. I mean, some of it is the fact that he does all these like really thick vocal harmonies, and some of them are quite dissonant and weird. There's actually a really, really good breakdown from a music theory perspective of this guy by the name of Rick Beato, who's got a big YouTube channel now, breaking down like line by line what's going on in the song Them Bones. And it's actually a lot of crazy stuff kind of going on in that song. A lot of it has to do with the vocal harmonies. So, yes, so he's got that vibe to him, and Chris Cornell's got his own vibe. But Alice in Chains for me was so huge back in the day. This was like, they weren't the band that turned me, because I used to be a hip hop guy, and then overnight I became a grunge dude. They weren't the band that turned me. That was Stone Temple Pilots, but they were the band that was like my first real love of of rock music, I would say. So they were really important to me in my development.
And was it Alice in Chains that came out of the desert rock scene? Let me see. One of them came directly out of it.
That was Queens of the Stone Age. Alice in Chains was real. Like they came out of Seattle, but they were sort of like a little bit always off to the side of a lot of these other Seattle bands, because they had really almost no punk roots. They were a metal band. They started out, they sounded, like they could have been Motley Crue. If I played you some of the early Alice in Chains songs, you'd be like, holy fuck, they were a hair metal band. But then they quickly changed into whatever they were going to be. But they always were a metal band. I think of them as a metal band that has like some grunge aspect to them. This is probably why you like them so much, Dave, is they really are just a metal band, but like with what they've taken from grunge is this like slow down tempos and the like simplified song structures and simplified riffs. Like if you listen to Man in the Box, it is such a simple riff. It's simple and syncopated. There's tons of space around every note and everything. And actually, when Alice in Chains came up, when they first like released Facelift, they were one of the first bands to like release a major label album on like out of the Seattle scene, and they were definitely the first one to have like, you know, anything like a hit. When they were on tour, they would go on tour with like Guns N' Roses, Metallica, Anthrax, and Alice in Chains supporting them in about 1990. And when they went on tour with these bands, these like metal bands, the crowd fucking hated them. Like they would pelt them. They would stand on stage and get like pelted with fucking beer and food and shit like that, and, you know, play their set and then just walk off stage or whatever. The people did not understand. They were too stripped down. They were too weird and like slow, and, you know, they were looking for Master of Puppets or whatever. And Alice in Chains was delivering them fucking Man in the Box. That's something quite different. And there's kind of a sad like story about like Metallica like making fun of them on stage and stuff like that, about being junkies and everything. They eventually kind of like reconciled a bit later or whatever. But yeah, they were kind of like the black sheep of the metal circuit, but also kind of like a little bit peripheral to grunge. So they were sort of their own thing. They kind of you know, just stuck out. They didn't fit into like any space in particular.
You know, listening to especially this song here, the way that Lane Staley, right, the singer Lane Staley, when the way he does his like runs and his dips, I'm thinking this guy listens to Candlemass. If you listen to how he does like like that shit, that sounds like something off of Nightfall. You know, this guy, I don't know. I'm pretty positive he had to have at least been influenced a little bit by Messiah Marcolin, because it's literally exactly what he does. Listening to this song, the song Dirt specifically sounds like it doesn't sound like a Candlemass song, but it sounds like these guys are trying to sort of emulate Candlemass a little bit, right? Like if you go listen to Nightfall, or what was their the other album with Tales of Creation and all this kind of stuff from the Messiah Marcolin era, he's just notorious for this. You know, you are bewitched, like that, and that was like his trademark. So to hear it again in Alice in Chains, I would not at all be surprised if Lane Staley was listening to some Candlemass, which at that time, you know, if you're playing in a band like this, and clearly Alice in Chains were a little bit kind of eclectic, eccentric music heads that pulled from all these different genres, they would have been aware of Candlemass, who are like a cult favorite in the underground metal scene. They might have even played with them, right? So
that's entirely possible.
Yeah, definitely. And speaking of doom metal and desert rock, we go over to Soundgarden, or not. No. Yeah, well, we're gonna go to Queens of Stone Age, but Soundgarden is what you got up next. So these two songs, I know you picked these songs because these are the ones where Chris Cornell lets his falsetto rip.
Yes. So I wanted to give you some early Soundgarden shit, because back in the day when everything was happening in like 92 or so, I got hold of Bad Motorfinger and I loved it. It was definitely one of those classic albums for me. I mean, Jesus Christ Posed and Outshined and Rusty Cage, just so many classic tracks off that album, and I still love it. And then, you know, listening to grunge and then getting into Faith No More and then getting into weird music and so on and so forth, I went through an evolution, and then I eventually came back to grunge a little bit later, after I had sort of like gone as far as I wanted to go at that point into weird music and like prog rock and stuff like that. Something I just still wanted. I wanted the simple sort of like earthy fucking straight ahead rock stuff, you know? And so what kind of like got me back into that was I just picked up a couple early Soundgarden records. I picked up Ultra Mega OK, which is what the first track is from. And I picked up Louder Than Love, which is the second one. So I picked up these albums and I was just like, holy shit. Like, number one, his voice is absolutely fucking ripping on these. But number two, there was just like I mean, Bad Motorfinger has some weird stuff going on. There is like some tracks on it where they do weird time signature things, really slow and heavy, like fucking down-tuned stuff. But that is just far, they take it way further on the earlier albums. And I got fucking obsessed with these albums, especially Ultra Mega and Louder Than Love. So I wanted to give Dave something from that era. It's got the vocal fireworks and everything, but it's also like the first track that I put on this list, Beyond the Wheel, it's really like it's just like a droning like low D riff for a minute or so, and Cornell is singing this like very hypnotic vocal line. And then suddenly it just explodes into this like heavy, sludgy grind where he just like starts wailing at the top of his vocal range. And it's just got this like crunchy, doomy guitar riff that like really just continues for like 5 straight minutes or so or whatever. And somehow they managed to make that interesting all the way throughout. I don't know. They're masters at this like weird song structure thing, this unusual song structure thing. And I love it. I just fucking like Beyond the Wheel is like one of those tracks for me that's like, it's probably in my top 10 or at least top 20 songs of all time list for me. And then the second track I gave Dave was really the single from Louder Than Love. And it's more of a conventional sort of like rock song, but it's still like it's got this cool groove to it and everything, and it just gives you the flavor of like that early Soundgarden vibe. So Dave, tell me, how did these hit you?
I didn't. Here's the problem: is you put them on after Alice in Chains, so it's like I probably would have liked it, but it was like after like those 2 Alice in Chains songs are like they like really. That's slap. Like the kind of grunge that I like, right? That slaps. So then you give me these Soundgarden songs that are a little bit kind of experimental and weird, and I liked them. I didn't love them. They're okay. I appreciate it. It sounds cool. What's his name's got a great voice. I could definitely see why you like them. I can see why people like it. It's unusual. It's let me see here. Which one did I like better? Let me put them on real quick and see which one. I think I might have liked Loud Love a little better.
Yeah, that's the one that's more of a song. Beyond the Wheels is kind of doing something a little bit weirder. I don't know. The thing about Soundgarden, especially the early Soundgarden, where he really lets it rip a lot, is like I just don't understand how that voice can be coming out of a human. I just don't. Like his vocal ability is just inhuman to me. He really has like a quite a gift.
Yeah, as far as all the grunge singers, he definitely probably has the widest range of all the big grunge singers that we're going to talk about today. He's definitely good. He's definitely good. So yeah, I liked it. I like Soundgarden. I didn't like these as much as the ones that everybody likes, but I thought they were good. I liked them.
Yeah. Right on. Well, moving on to Queens of the Stone Age. I gave you one of the tracks from the first Queens of the Stone Age album, which is probably my favorite, actually. I really like Songs for the Deaf. That's the one everybody likes, but and it's good. It's really good. That's like their Nevermind, right? That's the one where they were firing on all cylinders, where they wrote the most hits. Had Dave Grohl as a drummer. But the first album has got something to it I just love. I don't know what it is. I really like, I often like bands' early albums because they're doing something, they're sort of the most who they are. You know what I mean? Very often bands don't kind of grow into their sound, I find, or they grow into something, but they get away from like whatever it was that they were doing that like sets them apart, I find. Not always, but definitely Soundgarden is an example of that. But I really like Queens of the Stone Age first album. So this is a track that I just heard one time as I was like one of my audio engineer buddies just like had his iPod running one day. I got into Queens of the Stone Age quite late, but he had his iPod running while we were setting up like drums for tracking one day, and I just heard this track and I was like, holy fuck, who are these people? It was just like something about it. I just like the hook and like the simplicity of it. It's just like the song basically just goes back and forth between like a G and an E for the majority of the song. I mean, there's a chorus obviously, but it's just like, and it's got this crazy bend like, like throughout and everything. I just fucking loved it. I was like, that's a hook, dude. That's like that like this track here is an example of like what I love about Nirvana. I don't know what it is. It's just very simple. The vocal hook is really straightforward. There's 2 fucking chords, you know, like, and I love the guitar tone. I just love everything about the song. It's called Mexicola, by the way, for anybody that's listening. So, Dave, tell me what you thought of that one.
So this was another. First of all, the graphic on the video and like the aesthetic of that's my fucking jam. Like that looked fucking dope. The song is cool. It has some, you know, I love the tone. I love the fuzzed out bass. I don't know. It's another one of these things where it's like it sounds like stuff that I like, but doesn't quite get over the hump into something that like really slaps for me. It sort of sounds, because once in a while I'll put on just, you know, I'll do like stoner rock or doom metal playlist or whatever, and it goes through all of these, you know, kind of mid-tier, you know, stoner rock bands, and this is sort of what it sounded like. It sounded like one of the stoner rock bands that sound cool but don't quite do it for me. So,
well, I mean, I think if you don't like Nirvana, you know, this is not a Nirvana track or anything like that, but it's doing a lot of the same stuff that Nirvana is doing. So if you didn't love Nirvana, like, I'm not totally surprised that you wouldn't love this. So yeah, the next track in the playlist was Temple of the Dog's Hunger Strike. This is a really, really well-known song. I had to give Dave the song because it's a historically significant song. This is the hit song from that record that I explained about before, where Andrew Wood from Mother Love Bone, the guy who OD'd on heroin, and the scene sort of like rallied around his band and everything like that because everyone was really sad about it. This was really the hit song from that record, and it's the closest thing that I was going to give Dave to Pearl Jam, because I know he doesn't like Pearl Jam, and I don't really like Pearl Jam either. So
before you sent me this song, because I've heard this a million times, I've always thought this was Pearl Jam.
Really?
Yeah, I've always it was until you sent me this, I thought this was a Pearl Jam song.
It basically was, because it was like all the guys from Pearl Jam. It was Eddie Vedder's debut, even though it wasn't actually Pearl Jam at that point, but it was written by Chris Cornell as a tribute to Andrew Wood. So, I mean, we've all heard this song before. It's a really, really famous song, but it's also, you know, grunge could do some like pathos once in a while. You know, there's some songs that have like some emotion behind them that are not just sadness or depression or whatever, or pessimism. This one actually, I think, has like some real sort of like feeling behind it. And it's one of those things where, like, you know, your friend dies and this is the song you write for him or whatever. I mean, that's a once, you know, that's only gonna happen once kind of thing. So yeah, I don't think there's a lot to say about this track because it's so played. Everybody's heard it before. So speaking of tracks that are pretty well known, I also gave Dave some STP after this, some Stone Temple Pilots. I gave him one track off of Core, which I'm sure he knows very well, Cracker Man. I fucking love this song. This is
a good song.
I love every song off of that album, but like, I love this one, man. I just, there's something about it is just like, it's got that really lunkhead fucking riff, you know, like like, it's just so simple, right? But the thing is, these guys can fucking play too. Like the guitar player for Stone Temple Pilots does some really interesting. He uses some interesting chords and voicings and things like that. He kind of does a little bit of that in this song, not a huge amount, but he's really underrated. They're really underrated as songwriters. But I love the fucking vocal hook, dude. I love the chorus. It's just so good. It's just like, yeah.
All in all, if you said, yo, Dave, pick, if you could only hear one grunge album for the rest of the time and there was no other ones, if you had to pick the best album in its entirety, this would be the one that I pick.
Yeah.
This is probably like, this was the album that I listened to on the down low when I was hating on grunge. Right? this is what I'd be like, yeah, fucking grunge sucks. But, of course, yeah, that's a good ass fucking album. Yeah, it's got so many hits on it, man. These guys could write songs. Everybody's heard this song. Yeah, was it the I am smelling like a rose? Like that song. What's the other one? You got the I am, I said I want to get next to you. Like they got so many good fucking songs. Not just the ones that don't make it on the radio. I can't remember what they're fucking. Man, it's been so long since I sat down and listened to the whole album. But this one, Cracker Man's a good one. That whole album that's a good album. That is a dope rock and roll album. It's heavy. It's just like there's something. It like fucks. There's something kind of like virile about it, and some of the lyrics are very erotic, right? There's plenty of songs in there but this album is dope. This is a fucking awesome album. One of the best. This is probably my favorite grunge album.
It's just so unabashedly masculine too, and it's funny because they really dialed it back after that. And actually the next album that came out, because I love this album. This was the album that basically made me stop liking rap. You know what I mean? I was just like, I continue to love rap, but like it just completely turned me in another direction. I just like when this album came out, I remember hearing Plush on the radio, one of the famous songs off of it. I was just like, what is this? So I just ran out next week or whatever and like bought the cassette, brought it home. Actually, I think I bought the CD. It was probably one of the first CDs I bought, and brought it home, listened to it front to back from just.
Wait, which one is Plush? Which one is Plush?
That's the one that goes, and I see that these times go, like that one.
Yeah. And I'm feeling. That's a great song.
Oh, dude. It's a great song. So many great tunes off this album.
Yeah, I forgot about that one.
There's 12 tracks. 2 of them are little vignettes, but 10 of them are fucking massive hits. There's not a misstep on this album. So yes, this was the album. I just listened to it. I'm like, all right, I'm doing something different now. I like something else now. And that really turned me in another direction. So the next track I gave to Dave was from like 3 albums later. So Stone Temple Pilots goes on a weird weird development arc. So they put out this album. It's like an unabashed rock album, grunge album. Very masculine, very heavy. It's like as good as anything any grunge band put out. And then the next album after that is a little bit like, it's not as heavy. It's got some like more like contemporary type songs. There's some heavy songs on it, but they're clearly stretching out a little bit with their songwriting. And they really copped a lot of flack for the first album because they were not from Seattle and they were seen as posers. And Scott Weiland he's another Yarler. He's another one of those guys. So he was like, they came under a lot of heat for being posers, basically for like ripping off the Seattle sound. And you could tell that they consciously turned in another direction on the next 2 albums. The one after, so the second album is a little bit like softer. The one after that is like, really, I love it, but it's not a grunge album. Like it's almost like a psychedelic album in some ways. They really did a lot of different stuff. There's like one track that's like this breezy jazz number. There's all kinds of stuff. They're really experimental. And then the next album after that, so their fourth album, it's called Number 4. They went back to their roots. If you like core, Dave, and you have never heard Number 4, give it a try. There's so many fucking great songs on this album. It's a little darker. It's very heavy. And it's very fucking like straightforward kind of thing. I love it, man. This is easily the number 2 Stone Temple Pilots album for me. So what'd you think about this stuff?
So the next song you had on there, Down, it was like hearing Cracker Man. And after Cracker Man, I was like, fuck. So I went, I listened to a couple of the other Stone Temple Pilots songs. And I came back to Down because I don't know if I've heard this song before, but I didn't really recognize it until I put it on and like listened to it. What the fuck are these guys thinking? You know what I mean? The vocals on this sound so gay and they suck. And pleased to meet you. Shut the fuck up, dude. Like, what are you? That was the gayest shit. Dude, you guys had like the most boss, dope grunge album and sound in the game. And you turned it away and made this fucking corny shit. This is garbage. I hate it. Part of it, it's not even that I like hate the song so much. It's that I'm like so mad they turned away from something that I liked. That everybody liked.
Well, don't listen to the 2 albums in between because they're really not going to give you what you want, kind of thing. This is where they went back to being heavy, though. This is like, I don't know. It's like I could see the vocal performance, maybe like the non-heavy, like non-chorus, like non-heavy vocal performance in this track as being like, okay, I get what you're saying or whatever. But that fucking riff is just so heavy, dude. The other thing is that this album was really muddy sounding. Like, so if you listen to Core, the first album, the production on that is just so crisp. It is so pristine. It's really bright. Everything is very clear. It's got some great like guitar little flourishes, these like little sort of like guitar effects in the background. This is for me like a 10 out of 10 production album. And then number 4, although I really like the songs, is really, it's a lot more muddy. So that's kind of like, you know, that makes a big difference in the way it comes across sometimes.
Yeah, it was just, and I remember there was a while, who's the singer's name from Stone Temple Pilots? I forget
Scott Weiland.
Yeah, Scott Weiland. He goes off and has a solo career. And I remember he had a song called like Shangri-La-Di-Da or something. It was like fucking, so it was like, he was a tough guy on Core. And then he goes on and he starts like being more feminine. I remember I saw his solo shit. I can't remember what the song was called. It was something really. And he's dancing around like a and like, he's just like looking really gay and like, but like gay, like edgy gay. You know what I mean? He's got his hair spiked up and he's like trying to be edgy, pretty boy, feminine. And I'm like, dude, this guy's a fucking like, I thought he was a Phil Anselmo type because of his voice, and he sounds hard as fuck on Core. He does. He does. Yo, I am smelling like a rose. Like, he's fucking got it. That like sounds like a boss. And then he does this like stuff. It's like, dude, what do you do? I hated it. And I was like, there's no way this is the same guy. There's no way this is the same guy. And apparently he I remember back in the day, there was this big thing. Everybody said that he trashed his career and his sound because he was so self-conscious, because they said that he was ripping off Pearl Jam or something. I can't remember exactly what it was. So he was like trying so hard not to be Pearl Jam that he turned himself into something terrible, in my opinion, at least. But I don't know.
I think that's true. I think that is exactly what happened. Like, there's like, because I've watched a bunch of live performances where it's like that Sex Type Thing song, that one that's like, it's almost like what it is it's him basically like, it's like an ironic date rape song. So it's like him like taking the piss out of like, you know, some guy that like goes and like whatever, you know, rapes some girl or whatever. But it didn't kind of come off. They actually got a lot of heat for that song because people were like, what the fuck? Are you like serious or whatever? But he's like, no, it's a fucking satire, but nobody got it, right? So there's some like live performances where he like introduces that song and he's like has to fucking explain it or whatever, and like you can tell he's really embarrassed about it and everything. And it's just like, it's so sad because that first album, Core, is it's just unabashedly masculine. The guy sounds fucking 10 feet tall, you know, like his voice is just pristine and sounds amazing. It's just, I just wish that when the second album came out, I would be lying if I said I wasn't disappointed in it.
It was like, I don't know. I think that they're like, yeah, you're a fucking poser. You're not like you're from Seattle. It's like in trying to be like he's from Seattle, he got like hooked on dope and turned into a fucking fruitcake. And, you know, I don't know. He should have just been like, yeah, well, fuck Seattle. I'm doper than Seattle. Yeah. That's what he should have done, and just kept going and just released like 5 more cores. And like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, they could have done it too, because like the band was really talented. The guys, the 2 brothers, guitarist and bass player, were really good songwriters, really talented band. And unfortunately, their singer he started out as the fucking cherry on top of the cake, but he eventually kind of became their weak spot. So anyway, moving on to the next track, now this is one that I'm sure Dave has never heard before. This is one of those bands from Seattle that was like one of the more like underground bands. They're a legendary band in the scene, but like they never broke because they're fronted by a big burly like lumberjack looking dude that's like also a classically trained musician. But he was basically sort of like drafted by the label. I mean, he had his own band or whatever, and they were like, look, we're going to put you in flannel, we're going to make you into a lumberjack, and that's going to be your that's going to be your persona or whatever. And he just leaned into it. So this is Tad, by the way, and the song is Greasebox. And they're a pretty fucking cool band, but they had some bad breaks. They put out their first record, I think it was their first record, called 8-Way Santa. And they had this cover where they basically just like took a local they went down to a local porn shop and like rented a movie or whatever. And they took like cropped out like part of the movie. And it turned out that it was this local couple that the woman had like then later converted to like Christianity and become like a devout Christian. And she sued them, and it totally fucked over the band. And then later on, when they put out their second album, they had a single called Jack Pepsi that used some of the like stuff, like the imagery that like looked like Pepsi, and then, you know, Pepsi Cola sued them. And eventually they signed to a major label, and then they put out this promo poster it says Tad, it's heavy as shit, with Bill Clinton smoking a joint, and they were just immediately dropped from the label. So they just kept having like bad luck, one thing after another. But they were definitely one of the more metal influenced bands on Sub Pop, that classic label from Seattle. So yeah, I figured that, you know, I wasn't sure if you'd like this, but I figured I'd give it to you anyway.
Yeah, it was all right. I kind of vibe with the big fat guy playing an SG.
Yeah, like it's cool.
It's cool. You know, here's one thing that kind of, I was like, why have I never heard of this? And I go check out the guy. I was like, oh yeah, he's a big fat guy. So it's literally record companies will not let you go anywhere if you're a fat guy. It's like fat guys are not allowed to get popular. They want, you know, and I'm not saying that it's good to be fat. It's not good to be fat. You should be fit. You should be healthy, et cetera, et cetera. But like, let's be honest. There's guys out there that are just bubbas. You know what I mean? There's guys out there that are bubbas that you eat, you know, you eat a sandwich and it takes you a week to fucking burn it off. What's that called? Not the, what's it called? The body types with the
endomorph.
Yeah. Guys that are endomorphs like that, you're just a husky dude. It's just the way that it is. And, you know, some guys are just, you know, big boys. The problem is that, you know, I guess the The record company doesn't think that that's aesthetic. And honestly, a lot of times they don't even want big jacked guys. They don't want that.
No, they don't.
They want this skinny. I was actually listening to some dude. He was like an underground country guy in Nashville. He was talking about this. And he said, he's like, he was like an athlete and everything. He's like, he's a in shape, big guy. And they're like, they're like, you have to slim down before we shoot a video with you. And he's like, what the fuck? He's like, nah, fuck this. I'm not going to like hurt my health so I can look like what you want me to look like. Yeah. That's a thing. That's a thing that goes on. A lot of people don't realize they want men to look frail and weak and all this kind of stuff. They don't want a big jacked guy and they don't want a big fat guy. They don't want any of them things.
No. They
don't want a man that looks big, period.
And they don't want a man that looks like a man either. You know, this is one of the things that I like about grunge, and maybe we'll touch on it again, but I just like the fact that like the guys in the bands fucking sounded like men. You know what I mean? Like, for like however much you might hate Kurt Cobain for whatever reason or whatever, or like hate their politics, and I hate their politics too. But like Lane Staley sounds like a dude. Scott Weiland sounds like a dude. Kurt Cobain sounds like a guy. You know what I mean? None of the like they all have the grit in their voice. They all have the like raspy fucking sound. They all sound like men. You know what I mean? I think that was a huge part of the appeal for me back in the day. So, the fact is, especially these days, record labels and the music industry in general does not want anything even approaching masculinity anymore. So a band like Tad, forget about it. Like they're not even getting signed. They're not even getting signed anymore. Not like back in the day.
No, that's it.
So the next couple of tracks are by Mudhoney. This is another like really this point in the playlist. I'm giving Dave a lot of like historically significant stuff. Mudhoney was that band that like formed out of Green River, the other half of which became Mother Love Bone and then Pearl Jam. But Mudhoney is the weird is the punkier sort of like Stooges like half of Green River. So I gave Dave like two of their really classic tracks. Definitely more on the punk side. I wasn't really expecting you to like love these.
No, I wasn't.
I figured you had to hear them. So
I did like some of the guitar tone though. I do appreciate that they still had some cool guitar tone.
Yeah, they've got actually the album. I think it was an EP that came out was called Super Fuzz Big Muff, and they just named the album after the two fucking guitar pedals that they use, like the Big Muff pedal, which is a very, very classic guitar pedal, and the Super Fuzz, which is less well known. But yeah, so Mudhoney, very fuzzed out, very sort of like it just sounds like it just sounds like the Stooges to me. I don't know if Dave's ever heard the Stooges, but
I have not.
I love them. So
I like that because I also have a Super Fuzz pedal.
Nice. That's fucking classic, dude. Classic.
Yeah.
So the next one after this is Mother Love Bone's Stardog Champion. So again, this is that Andrew Wood guy. The Mother Love Bone is the brainchild of this like super precocious rock star dude. Unfortunately, he was also a massive drug addict. He started this weird like glam band back in the day. But eventually like other Seattle bands kind of outpaced them and they broke up. But this was right around that time that like seminal band Green River broke up, and he became the front man of the like more like aspirational half of Green River, the guys who wanted to fucking make it big, right? Mm-hmm. So Mother Love Bone is a total glam rock outfit, which is weird because they do not fit anywhere into the Seattle scene as a result of that, but they were really well loved because this guy just had such a magnetic personality. They're much closer to like Guns N' Roses or Motley Crue than to Nirvana for sure.
I was actually going to say they kind of sound like Guns N' Roses from Seattle.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, they started to build this huge buzz, got signed, recorded their debut record, but of course the guy OD'd just a couple of days before it was released. So what did you think of this track, Dave? If you don't hate hair metal, I thought you might like this one.
I actually thought this song kind of fucked. This is one of my favorite songs on the list. I like this one.
I thought you might, yeah.
Yeah, this is a good song. It was a good song. I do think, he does some stuff with his vocals that it's like, there's some of these grunge guys. They with the vocals, they do a little. I don't know. I don't know how to describe it. Maybe it's just because I grew up listening to guys that were very classically trained singers that were very. I don't know what would be the word for it. There was clear form to how they sang. You know what I mean? They didn't go off. Guys like Dio and guys like, let's say Bruce Dickinson and Rob Halford, they very much executed notes strongly and stayed within the scales that were in tune, and they didn't do any of that. They didn't do a lot of the kind of weird kind of. I don't know how to describe it.
The technical term is melisma. That's what you're talking about. Where they sing notes. They sing more notes than like the words that they speak or whatever. Where they do those like vocal runs basically.
Well, that's present in metal too, but it's just it's different in grunge, and it's like, wow, you just fucking.
They're definitely like untutored. That's for sure.
But overall, I thought this song was good. I thought this was a really good song. I like the tone of it. I think the guy has a good voice. They look like Guns N' Roses. Yeah. They look with it's like post glam with the weird hats, and the singer reminds me of Axl Rose with the way he dances, and he's got the tight pants with his shirt tucked in. Yeah. I don't know. And I would say Guns N' Roses is definitely at least a little bit influenced by grunge with some of the sounds that they came out with. You know what I mean? Just the way that Axl Rose did some of his runs and the way he sang a little bit sometimes.
Yeah, I could see that.
Yeah. Knock it on heaven's door. Like that was a little grungy. Yeah. But no, Mother Love Bone, I thought it was cool. I thought this was a good track.
Nice. All right, next up I gave Dave some Smashing Pumpkins. Because I kind of have to. Like I always lump them in with the grunge bands. They were doing some different stuff. They were definitely not just a grunge band, but important in the alt rock scene, shall we say? So, and I tried to give Dave some of the heavier tracks, some of the heavier Pumpkins tracks. So yeah, just how did that hit you?
I have not heard these songs before, but I've heard a fair amount of Smashing Pumpkins. I grew up in the 90s. Smashing Pumpkins were huge.
They were everywhere.
I had a lot of friends that were like big fans of them. I never really got into them, but I could see their appeal. They definitely had a heavy vibe. I do like Billy Corgan now that he's old, because he's such a fucking miserable, cynical, like he's such a jerk off. You know what I mean? He just like hates everything and has these like, he's just salty. He's just a salty, he's a miserable old man.
Yeah. He's an old man yelling at clouds.
Yeah. I like that. He's like, well, I just think that he's always got, anytime he gets interviewed and he gets asked about anything new, he never has anything good to say. He's just a dick. And I've heard he's a dick in real life. Like that. I think not a nice guy.
Yeah, no, I thought that these would be some good ones to give you. The first track is a lot more straight ahead. It's, again, this could be like a Nirvana track. It's just a very, very simple riff. I also wanted to give Dave some stuff where it was like Corgan is fucking yowling like a cat in heat. Here's the thing I like about Billy Corgan. His voice sucks. Yeah. But he still fucking kills. He could still fucking do something with it. What kind of talent do you have to like have that voice and fucking put out smash hits? I don't know. Like the songwriting from the Pumpkins, and I actually didn't like them back in the day. I had a friend who tried to turn me on to actually this album that both of these tracks came from. The first track's called Bodies. The second's called Where Boys Fear to Tread. And I didn't like it. I was just like, nah, it's not for me. I don't like the guy's voice or whatever. But then I got into a band back in the day, a grunge band, where the singer was like a huge Pumpkins fan. And he's like, you got to check out this record. And I listened to it and I fucking got it. I instantly got it. The songwriting is really good. It's very simple. It's very hooky. It's very straightforward. Again, he's got that same thing that Kurt Cobain does, where he just like the way that the vocal sits on top of the guitar riff is just like, it just locks into place just perfectly, but it's not exactly the same. So that's the first track. The second track is a lot heavier, kind of weird sort of thing. It's got this angular, jagged guitar riff that's kind of a little bit dissonant or whatever, but I just love the way it fits together. And I love the drummer. Actually, one of the things that's like my favorite thing about the Pumpkins is the drummer. He was actually like a jazz drummer initially. So he's got like a real groove, like his playing is really in the pocket. And that really comes out on this second track. That's like the Corgan and this drummer, Jimmy Chamberlain. That is the Pumpkins. They just fucking rule. I don't know. I'm a big fan. I like these guys.
Yeah, I actually like the second track better. That down on down down on down down on down on, that sounds a little doomy to me, right? Yeah. And clearly, Billy Corgan is a Black Sabbath guy. You know what I mean? So you definitely hear some Black Sabbath. What Smashing Pumpkins? I was actually, I said this to you. I was like, you consider Smashing Pumpkins a grunge band? Because I don't really consider them a grunge band. I consider them like an alt rock, or I don't know what they would be called. I don't know. They were one of those bands in the 90s that came out and like didn't really fit a genre.
No,
right? Yeah. They were pre-nu metal mallcore, but they were kind of their own thing. Right.
Yeah.
Bands like another one, Korn. Korn is a band that I would throw into this. You know, a lot of people when they think Korn, they think, oh, nu metal. Well, Korn came out before nu metal, and nu metal sort of came after Korn. And if you go back, you listen to Korn, they were doing a lot of stuff that didn't fit in with nu metal and never fit in with nu metal. Right.
I would actually defend the first Korn album. I think that one's actually pretty cool. It's not my favorite thing in the world, but it's heavy as fuck. Like, it's one of the first albums like on a major label that's like down tuned to like drop B or something like that. Like, they're super fucking heavy. They
were like the first guys that used 7-string guitars.
That's what it was. Yeah.
They had 7-string guitars, and that nobody did that before them. Yeah. At least that I think that there are some death metal bands that might have did. Oh, you know, I'm gonna have to look this up. So I'm gonna look this. I want to look this up because just for my own thing. But Smashing Pumpkins, like I don't love it. It's not my shit. I probably wouldn't go back to it and listen to Pumpkins, but I definitely, I respect it, and I didn't hate listening to it.
That's interesting, because I totally had you pegged for like that you would hate Smashing Pumpkins. So I tried to give you the heavier shit out of all of that. So the next track after these guys, after Pumpkins, is another Alice in Chains track, We Die Young. This is like, again, it's like fucking classic. This is the opening track from their debut, Facelift. This is a metal track, dude. I don't know. Do you have anything to say about this, Dave? Or it's just like so classic. I don't know if we should just mention it, move on. But
oh yeah, Alice, this song fucks. This song fucks.
So good. Yeah, that's and the lyrical stuff too. It's really dark. It's about gang war. It's just fucking awesome. So the next track after that is sort of on the other end of Lane Staley's career, where after the third Alice in Chains album, that was the one where he had just dissolved into being an inveterate junkie. Alice in Chains was basically done. I mean, they hadn't actually broken up, but everybody knew. And Lane checked himself into a rehab center at the same time as one of the guys from Pearl Jam had checked himself into the same rehab center. So they struck up a musical friend. They knew each other, but they struck up like a musical relationship there and started like writing songs, and got together with a drummer from another scene band called Screaming Trees. And they put together this record called Above and the band that they formed was called Mad Season. Now the track that I gave Dave is Lifeless Dead from that record. I've actually given you another track from that before when we talked about songwriting on one of our podcasts. But this is so this is another like Lane Staley moment, and it's kind of Alice in Chains like, but there's like some other shit that's going on here too. So what do you think about this one?
You're talking Mad Season here?
Yeah.
I had to bring it back up to hear what it sounded like to remember. I don't know. It was okay. It sounded like just generic grunge song. It was catchy. It was melodic. It's a good song, but nothing about it really stood out to me like some of the other, especially coming after that Alice in Chains song. Like this one was just like, I don't know. It just yeah.
Well, We Die Young is like easily in the top fucking 5 Alice in Chains songs, I would say. This one, it's not Alice in Chains, but it's like late era Lane Staley. He leans a little bit too hard on the vocal harmonies. Like he always had great vocal harmonies, but this is where he's kind of softened up a bit and everything like that. I mean, you got to talk about Mad Season because it's such a classic record. I guess in retrospect, I should have probably given you something a little bit more because like this record, like that was like the grunge song off that record, but there was a lot of other stuff on there too. There was some of the stuff that was a bit softer, a little bit more like 70s kind of like, I don't know what you call like adult oriented rock or something like that. It was just like really cool and very, very vibey, very like, whatever. So this album very often gets mentioned as classic grunge album. So the next one I gave you is another Stone Temple Pilots track. That was from that album that you hated again. So I expect you didn't like this one either.
No, you gave me a Melvins song next.
Oh, that's right. I forgot them. Yeah. So I gave Dave a real slice of like, this is classic Melvins. What'd you think of this one?
So it's like a mix. So Melvins does this thing where it's like they entice me to come like, oh man, great. This is going to be a great riff. And then it's like kind of fucking off. It's just off kilter. It's just like they subvert expectations a lot with the way the songs go. It's like it's a little frustrating. Sometimes like in the middle of the song, about like a minute in or whatever, there's like a really dope kind of groove that goes on, and then they just like fucking rip your rug out from under you. It's like, dog, come on, throw me a bone with this. It's okay. I see why people like it, but I don't know. I just. Like, stop confusing me.
This is some of the earlier Melvins. It's only a couple of years before those tracks I put at the beginning of the playlist. I mean, the thing about the Melvins, one of the things that they would do purposefully as songwriters is they would try not to repeat riffs. So they would like, the songs that they would write would basically be these sort of like fucking composite like junk piles like riffs that only sort of fit together or whatever. And like it's like it's almost the opposite of like Sleep, Dope Smoker, where they like got the one riff and they repeat it for like 10 minutes and then there's another riff and they repeat that for 10 minutes. The Melvins are the complete opposite of that. I mean, they're as heavy as Sleep, but they don't want to fucking repeat anything. You know what I mean?
But it's like in that they share with, because like Sleep like breaks the rules by doing the same shit over and over and over again, and Melvins breaks the rules the other way.
Yeah, exactly.
They kind of like remind me of each other a little bit for some reason.
Yeah, somehow there is a like lineage there. There's another record actually where like Melvins, it's from 1992. It's called Lysol. Like, here's another record that they had to retitle because they got sued. But and what it is basically the first stoner metal album. It's like they have like the opening track. It's just this like 7 minutes of feedback and like a riff played with no drums, and then the drums kick in. They're super sludgy and slow. This is a classic. The Lysol is a classic record. Anyway, the track I gave Dave is called "If I Had an Exorcism." It's from another album, and it really that's what most of the early Melvins sounds like. It's just sort of jagged, angular, weird ass like song structures and stuff like that. So anyway, the rest of the playlist, I don't know if we'll go through it because I gave Dave some like different stuff. I gave some things that weren't grunge a little bit. But yes, so anyway, that's a trip through some of the classic grunge stuff, but also some of the stuff that's a little bit off the beaten path. I just wanted to give Dave some stuff I thought he'd like, and some of the heavier side of grunge, some stuff he's heard, some stuff he hasn't. But for me, this genre is really important to me in my development, and I will defend it. I think it's fucking awesome. But anyway, before I rant about that, Dave, I'll get your thoughts on what you heard as a whole.
I didn't hate it. There was some stuff in there that I'd never heard before that I thought was really good. There was some stuff in there that I was like, that I didn't like as much. No, it wasn't bad at all. It's not nearly as bad as I used to think it is. Right? So I'll definitely say that. And I recognize how important grunge was for the history of rock music. It was very, very influential. There were some really, really great talents that came out of that scene. Some stuff that I actually today really, really like. Alice in Chains, Stone Temple Pilots, their one album before they got gay. There was a bunch of stuff in there that just really rolls. Is timeless rock and roll music. That I think that the bands that really, really survive, in my opinion, from that era are in themselves like transcendent. They transcend the genre of grunge in and of itself because they were just doing timeless, awesome rock music. And there's a reason that you hear, on the radio every other day, freaking stuff like, you hear that all the fucking time. There's a reason everybody knows that fucking song because it's a great, timeless song. It's just a brilliant fucking song. So grunge, is it my favorite as a genre? Nah, it's still not my favorite. But are there some bands that I really appreciate and respect and think were great? Big time.
Yeah, for sure, man. And, I think that grunge sort of like the one complaint that you hear about it, which is that it's depressing. To be honest, I don't think that that's a valid complaint, really. And I'll tell you why. So, I mean, like Zoomers and like younger millennials they don't really have any frame of reference for what the pre-internet age was like. And I know this is an old man thing to say, but like, this was the end of history, right? This was right around the end of the Cold War, when it was clear that like liberalism had pretty much entirely triumphed, right? Before this, there was like communism, like actual fucking communism in the world. This is not something that we kind of think of today, right? But right around this time, the late 80s, it was clear that was over. And it was going to be all Bush and Clinton as far as the eye could see forever. It was just going to be more fucking free trade, more capitalism, more like shitty church ladies fucking pearl clutching about some puritanical bullshit, more fucking multinational corporations shitting all over the environment, more fucking corny ass like moderate rock or poodle hair shit, forever. And this dynamic was never going to end. And that was kind of the lay of the land in like the late 80s, right? So it looked like neoliberalism was basically going to have its like fucking 1,000-year reign. And like, I think that this is kind of historically unique, actually. What happened is right at the peak of all of that, just as that was all reaching its peak and zenith, just as the West had finally crushed all its fucking enemies and every contender it could possibly have was leveled, something happened. There was a fucking awakening in the zeitgeist. Collectively, white America realized that something was fucking wrong, even as it had pretty much, triumphed and had everything its own way. I think this is actually pretty significant because, like, in the late 80s, it was like we were ready for this, right? Like, there had to be a reaction to this fucking Reaganite, Jimmy Swaggart, poodle hair fever dream. And that reaction was pretty, it wasn't perfect. It was slacker nihilism, right?
Yeah.
Was it ideal? Definitely it was not ideal. But it was the first time that the West kind of stood up since I would say the 1930s and said, this is fucked, right? And this time, unlike then, the call was coming from inside the house, right? Like the revolt, the fuck this was coming from inside the Anglosphere, inside the West. And this was what slacker nihilism was. It was like the reaction to realizing that something was rotten, like here at home. It was this crisis point, like where it's almost like admitting you have a problem. And that's the first step towards recovery. This is what I see grunge as a avatar of. I mean, like, the 1980s was base. Like, Dave and I talk all the time here on Culture Dads about, like, all the cool shit that happened in the 80s. But, like, I was there. I remember what the 80s looked like. And most of the stuff that we talk about on Culture Dads that fucking rules about the 80s, and I will defend it all day. I will defend all of that shit. Most of that is kind of like the undercurrents. You think of like new wave of British heavy metal. You think of like comic books. You think of like cool films, some of which were mainstream, but most of which are not. You think of like black metal and shit like that. Like, this is all the cool stuff that was going on in the 80s, and most of it was kind of countercultural. The mainstream cultural in the 1980s, and even like from like about the 50s on, really, the mainstream culture from that time is hokey as fuck. Yeah. Almost all of it has aged incredibly poorly. Almost all of it is just unlistenable or unwatchable. Like, I think guys have nostalgia goggles for the 80s, especially in our scene, and I would just like to disabuse them of that for just a moment. It's like, just look at what was on the Billboard Top 100 in all of the 80s. You're not going to find any of the shit that we talk about in Culture Dads. You're not going to find Motorhead. There's going to be no Dio. You will never find Manowar, right? You're not even going to find Metallica until the 90s. But in the 80s, you're not going to find any cool shit. In the top 100, it's going to be Cyndi Lauper. It's going to be Rick Astley. It's going to be fucking, what was that band? It's going to be Wham. It's going to be like USA for Africa singing like We Are the World. Like that's what was in the main. That's what the 80s really looked like when you were there and you were watching TV at the time, and not just like watching, documentaries about it. And even the 90s had that same kind of show. Of course it did. It had fucking I'm too sexy for my whatever, right? Like, it had all the same like gay bullshit, but there was one exception. There was one thing that wasn't fucking corny and like stupid and idiotic. There was one movement that wasn't underground, that was on the top of the charts and crushing all that bullshit, that was uber mainstream, and it was coming from a real fucking honest and powerful place, and that was grunge. So when that came along and completely ended Motley Crue and ended Michael Jackson and all of that shit, this was something that appealed to a huge fucking chunk of suburban, disaffected white youth. And it appealed for a very good reason, I think. And we even talked about this in the black metal episode. Black metal was metal that had purged itself of pretty much all the non-European musical elements, right? Black metal was fucking awesome. And it had purged itself of all, like, black music, basically. But it was nowhere near a mainstream movement. You think of other, like, massively popular musicians or movements. You think of the British Invasion, you think of like Led Zeppelin, you think of Black Sabbath, even like disco. All of these had significant black music elements. Grunge was the first and last time, I would say, in the modern era that a popular music form had purged itself of all of that. It was a genre for white people by white people. I mean, it wasn't.
There was
perfect.
a lot of blues in it, though. There was a lot of blues in it.
There was some, like you could hear some of it in Soundgarden. I guess there was some of it in Alice in Chains, but it was definitely like the first time until like Slayer and Pantera really fucking took over after grunge, that a lot of that shit was like pushed way, way, way down. And it wasn't perfect. I mean, grunge, I will not defend its shitty politics. It was kind of a, like, you know, way to say fuck you, dad, and that's kind of stupid. It was black-pilled, but it kind of had a right to be black-pilled. In fact, if you were alive in the early 90s and you weren't black-pilled about the shitty milquetoast Bush 1 era, there was kind of something wrong with you. You know what I mean? So there's no mystery to me, at least, about why grunge caught fire. It spoke to a huge chunk of white youth. It didn't want anything to do with the fucking coke-addled Reaganite corporate culture of the 1980s. And in the 90s, it was like, this was basically like childhood's end, right? It was the first time in generations that the West took its own fucking problems seriously. And again, it was not perfect, but it was the first time when that happened. And I think that that's important. And that really, that was the counterculture that was going on at that particular time. That was the reaction to something that was kind of ugly and stale and cringe. And if you want to look for that same countercultural energy today, you will not find it in the mainstream, but you will find it in what we're doing. Now, we don't agree with those guys in terms of politics, but I think structurally, we are the counterculture in the same way today that were the countercultural back then.
So I pulled up the greatest hits in 1985, and just about everybody you mentioned. We Are the World, USA for Africa, Wham, Billy Ocean, freaking... Oh my God!
It was a dark. I'm telling you, bro, it was a dark age. In the mainstream, there was a lot of cool shit that was like just below the surface, and you kind of had to dig a little bit for it. It doesn't seem like it's just below the surface now, because all the digging has been done, right? And it's on YouTube. But if you were just a kid watching TV in like 1986 or 7 or something like that, it was a desert of like good stuff. You know what I mean?
There's a couple good things on here that aren't that bad. Like you got let me see here. Yeah, like this like REO Speedwagon is on here, and now they're not the dopest.
They're not terrible.
They're not terrible. It's got I can't fight this feeling anymore. But you also have fucking Madonna was trash and so subversive. Tina Turner was so fucking subversive. These were like Madonna was like popularized being a slut. She was like the first like everybody's talking. What's that bit that bitch that has the black lady has the pink hair that everybody calls a slut. I can't remember. One of the millions of them, right? Yeah. Madonna was the first one. Madonna was the one that started doing that. And it's like what's it called? If Phil Collins is on here, hey, I can't hate on Phil Collins.
I will give it up for Phil Collins. That guy was a hell of a songwriter.
Hall & Oates is on here. Let Hall & Oates be on there.
It's a bit of a meme, but yeah, all right.
Bro, fucking Hall & Oates, they're from Philly. I got like Duran and fucking Bryan Adams or Bruce Springsteen. Bruce Springsteen was such a people talk about, let me tell you. So Bruce Springsteen, I was talking about earlier bands that got pop. Bruce Springsteen wrote a song, I believe it was called Allentown, which Allentown is a city that's, in PA, and it's kind of like a shithole, like nobody gives a fuck about. But because he wrote that song, and I believe Bruce Springsteen's from New Jersey, which is, an hour and a half east of me. This was sort of Bruce Springsteen territory. So, like, fuck Bruce Springsteen. And he's such a liberal and he's such a piece of shit.
His politics are garbage.
He's such a cuck, and he's so overrated. He has no good songs. He got popular with that Born in the USA because it came out during the time of the Cold War and the Berlin Wall. So everybody was it was like, what's that country song that all the like conservatives love right now?
The redhead
proud
guy.
To be an American. At least I know I'm free. Like that fucking corny ass shit.
That's where that came from.
Born in the USA was that song of that era. It was so corny and so gay, and all the normies loved it. Fucking garbage. There were okay, the 80s were dope, the 90s were dope. It was like the age of the dopest underground and the dopest subcultures and stuff like that. The mainstream was so fucking gay. And we look back on it, and I'll tell you what, like you go listen to like vaporwave music and like all this kind of stuff, and you could go find some cool synth music like that. The shit that they make now is like better than the stuff that was in the 80s. Yeah. The stuff in the 80s, a lot of it was really gay. Yeah. And I'm saying this as a guy that like is like an 80s fetishist.
I don't want to shit on the 80s too hard here because I like it too, man. But there is a sort of thing that goes on in mostly fucking Twitter where it's fetishized as being this like, this golden age where like white people, like white culture was still on top, and like people don't remember that like so much multiculturalism in the 80s. Like that was the 80s was the advent of the based black guy, the sidekick or whatever. And it's just like, I don't know, a lot of that stuff is just so fucking corny, and maybe it's whatever. I've got my thrownness. I was born at the time that I was. These generational debates can go on forever, but all I remember is that, like, in about 1993 or 4, 5, we were laughing at that shit. We were laughing at a lot of the mainstream stuff in the 80s. We all liked fucking Terminator. We all liked Conan. We all liked the fucking bass stuff. But there was so much of it that was cringe as fuck. And like a lot of Zoomers, a lot of like young people who are just like, they were born after the 80s, have a view of it that like does not really square with like what it looked like on the ground when it was happening. Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. I think, it also, there's like this phenomenon where Zoomers are clinging on to things that were universally thought of as cringe during that time. Like new metal, like there's like Zoomers that are talking about how based like Limp Bizkit was, and like just they like new metal now, and it's like, dude, you guys are like, I don't know if it's an ironic thing or I don't know. It must be.
It's like a double ironic thing where it's they're counter signaling the counter signalers of the dude. That shit was gay, dude. That shit was so gay. Yeah. That was like maximum poser stuff. If you guys were around back then to see the people that were like really into that shit, dude, you would not like it. You would not like it. You would say Dave lived through that era too, and so did I. I mean, I was like, when new metal was popping, I was like in my late teens, and right around 1995, I realized that like music was starting to get shitty. I was like, the music this year is not as good as last year. I was like, oh, okay, whatever. It'll get better. And it just never did. No. And that was like fucking almost 30 years ago. You know what I mean? Like, whatever. But fucking dude. Okay. I've just spent, a good amount of time slapping the 80s around, but I'll say this. The absolute fucking nadir, the absolute dark age, the lowest of the low
was the late 90s through probably the mid 2000s. That was the fucking worst. That was the real cultural desert. There was almost nothing. There was nothing, as far as I can think of, zero going on in the mainstream, at least, that was worth listening to. And
you think it's worse than now?
You know what? I've actually, like, maybe I'm just like old and retarded now, but I don't hate current pop music as much as I hated it back then. I still don't like it. Like, I would never listen to it. I would, maybe it's just like my kids listen to it so much now, or like, they just like, the missus will chuck on, what is it, Spotify or whatever. And I'm just like, yeah, there's that song. Yeah, there's that song. I don't hate it. There's some stuff I hate, but god damn, listening to like what was going on in 2005, like fucking Black Eyed Peas and like Christina Aguilera, and like, like a fart in a crowded elevator. Like, Jesus Christ, I hated that shit. And some of that was probably like because I was a musician back then, and like that's what was cool, that's what people liked, and it was just a million miles away from anything that I was trying to do. You know what I mean? Yeah. And fucking My Chemical Romance, fuck that. You know what I mean?
I don't even know what they sound like. I don't even.
Good.
Was that popular?
It was massively popular. So when I was playing music in the like mid to late 2000s, that was when emo was really popping off. You had Dashboard Confessional, My Chemical Romance, just all these, like, this litany of talentless, dreary emo boy, fucking eyeliner wearing fucking crybabies. Like, people think grunge was like, dour and depressing and like, whatever. Fuck, it was like, that was like a fucking island of like pure masculinity compared to what was going on in that era. We're probably going to get a bunch of guys, unsubscribing right now who like that stuff. But yeah, if you like emo, get the fuck out of here. Sorry.
I was a teenager when I was in high school, emo was like just starting. There was, in my like senior year in high school, there was like the first batch of emo kids that popped up, and they got fucking terrorized. These kids got beat up and terrorized. Oh my God, we bullied these kids, everybody. Because it's like you're wearing fucking eyeliner and stuff when you're. There was always like a couple goths walking around, but these kids were, really, really, dude, we used to smash them in the lockers, rip their book bags off their backs and dump them out and all this. And even, worse for wear, there was a meme like, that every metalhead has an emo girlfriend. It was a thing that,
really?
Yeah, all the metalheads were banging the emo girls. So not only were we bullying them in school, we were fucking their girls. My girlfriend in high school was an emo girl. Yeah. So it was like, I don't know, dude. It was.
I think we found the mechanism that Ed Dutton is explaining for dysgenics in his book. I think that's we really needed to have metalhead to metalhead couplings, and like we'll have this like breeding program of like we've got the Kshatriya class, we've got the fucking warrior class, and then we've got the underclass. Like to like. That's how you got to breed these things. You know what I mean? They can be the underclass. They can be the Shudras. They can be the the folks fucking cleaning out toilets or whatever.
They're the thralls. Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. But yeah, that was what was going on back then. And it was, I don't know.
It was bad. It was really bad, man.
There was so much gay stuff. So you look at, I do feel bad for Zoomers because they did grow up in a time that, like, the stuff that they're like, oh man, you remember that when this was cool? And I was like, dude, that was not that cool. You know what I mean? Like they're talking, a lot of them, they grew up, their coolest video games were on GameCube they, I don't know. It just was. I don't know. I just don't get it. Because I got some Zoomer guys that are kind of in my circle in real life, and they're showing me stuff. Like, yo, you remember this? I was like, dude, that was poser shit. Like, we used to beat those people up. We used to like bully those people. Like, don't listen to this around me. Like, I don't even want to hear this right now. Yeah. They get post-hardcore and screamo and like all this. Like, yo, was this popular? I was like, dude, I don't even fucking know. Like, that shit was gay. Like, you're asking the wrong guy. So, was there some dope stuff going in the 80s and 90s? Hell yeah. And there was, and I'll be honest, the aesthetics of you mentioned about how grunge was metal was also a reaction.
Yeah, it certainly was.
You got the thrash bands that came out during that time. That was a direct reaction to glam metal or glam rock or hair metal or whatever you want to call it. It was a complete reaction against the mainstream. So guys that go and they pull up bands like Slayer and bands like Death Angel and Anthrax and SOD and freaking Metal Church or whatever, you dig up these bands. These guys were literally going on stage and saying fuck Poison and fuck Cinderella. And Exodus had a song called Kill All Posers. Like, who do you think they're talking about? They're talking about like mass murdering glam metal. And here's the deal. You mentioned about like metalheads taking emo girlfriends. The thing of it is that there weren't really any real metalhead chicks. And the metalhead chicks were either posers or, I mean, there was a couple of them. It was once in a while you'd find one. And nowadays it's more common to find a girl that likes some metal authentically because it's not really a scene. But most of the metalhead girls were really ran through and you didn't want them. I mean, the emo girls were a little bit more innocent. And
I know the kind, man. And to its credit, if you wanted to find a metalhead girl, you had to be fucking coming up in the 1980s.
Yeah,
that's when they were all around.
Yeah, like my wife is a metalhead or like an older metalhead woman, right? And she did not have any female metalhead friends, like none. She was like the only one. She was like one of the bros because she grew up around brothers and male cousins, and they got her into it. So another thing we wanted to talk. I know we're going on 2.5 hours. I don't know if you want to dig into this, but kind of the appreciation that happened because let's be honest here, slacker nihilism ended up with a lot of dead musicians, and a lot of these guys towards the end of their lives. Because you mentioned Lane Staley. Like when he was on the downswing, nobody was fucking with him. And then all of a sudden when he died, Chris Cornell is another one. Chris Cornell, before he died, which there's some weird stuff around him, he was exposing some child trafficking and there's some conspiracies that he got suicided.
Really? Holy shit.
There's some conspiracy. Him and the guy from Linkin Park, I guess, were boys, right? And they both croaked within a week of each other. And like a few months before, they started this foundation to help child victims of trafficking in the entertainment industry or something like that. So they it's not far-fetched to think that they got whacked, right? But anyway, going back to this other stuff, like Lane Staley, what year did he die? I think I remember when he died.
I think it was 2002.
Yeah. I remember Lane Staley when he died. Everybody on the radio was jerking off about him. Oh, we're so sad, et cetera, et cetera. But they weren't really fucking with him in life. I mean, he had his success and all that kind of stuff. But then, after he croaked, it was like, oh my God, we loved him so. It's like, did you really love him that much?
Yeah, it's fucking sad, dude. Like that people and Kurt Cobain, I think, is the real example of this. Where I loved Nirvana. I know Dave doesn't, but I loved Nirvana. A lot of people did. They were the first one to really break. They broke the scene wide open. They kicked down the door. They did a lot of cool stuff. But the way that Kurt Cobain is like turned into some angelic figure and has been basically since he died is kind of grotesque. I think he would actually be kind of disgusted by it, to be honest. It goes way too far. Was he a great musician? Yes. Was he a great songwriter? Yes. But the way that he's like put on into this rock pantheon as though he's so far above like the Lane Staleys of the world that, like, you know, who were forgotten for many years, like, you know, when he was really going down. Kurt Cobain has always been jerked off since he died. And, you know, if he hadn't have died, he would not be nearly as like lionized as he is. He would not be nearly as celebrated, because people somehow seem to just, they have, you know, they will fucking celebrate the dead artist and they won't appreciate them when they're around. And this is something that's very, very unfortunate. I don't know what could be said to turn that around. It's just something in the human psyche where, like, ultimately what it is, I think, is it's oikophobia, which is a, you know, $5 word to describe, to say that you hate what's there, what's close, what's present, what's, you know, available to you. It's really the fucking problem with the West. And it has been for, well, maybe thousands of years, hating what's native to you, hating what's yours, what's your tradition, what's given to you, what's close, you know, hating your family, hating your hometown, hating everything that's like right there. That is really what makes you you. And the dead artist, the celebrated dead artist who nobody gave a fuck about before he died, is just one more very small, you know, example of that sort of thing, this oikophobia. And I don't know what can be done to fix that, but something needs to be done to fix that. And it's just one of those things where it's just unfortunate. It's just really unfortunate that artists are not appreciated when they're around.
No, I think you hit the nail on the head. There is this kind of terminal self-disinterest in things, in who we are. And it might be worse among like our spheres, our spaces in the Necromunda. It might be worse. There's this entire it's almost like a fucking death cult. It's morbid how people, I don't know how to, they only care about that. They get more catharsis over the act of mourning what is not or what has been than they get out of succeeding and victory and things that are present and alive and stuff like that today. There's something that happened. I'm not going to say it because it's going to get me in trouble, but this is something that I feel pretty strongly about, with something that happened recently, and I probably shouldn't say it, but it's very frustrating to me. And I think that I don't know. I think it's baggage, modern baggage, that is so present and is amplified in the places that we inhabit. I don't know why. Actually, I think I do know why. It's because of that, what I just said. I don't know. I hate it. I think it sucks. And I think that it's a terminal cancer that will keep us from having the proper healthy instincts to celebrate and to build and to be generative. It is a severely it is a terminally degenerate instinct that we have to, and I see it all the time. You know, guys that are like, you know, we're trying to talk about heathenry or something. We're talking about, you know, living pagan things. They just are not interested in it, and they want to go be Hindus, or they want to go explore Gnosticism, or they want to go get into some weird, you know, occultist horse shit. And it's like, why aren't we good enough? Why aren't we good enough? Those of us that are, and I'm not just talking about spirituality. I'm talking about those of us living today that are movers and shakers and trying to get things done. Why is it that we're not good enough until we're fucking dead? You know what I mean? Like, here's the deal. I'm just going to say it, dude, you know, and I'm not saying anything like the stuff that I'm doing and the guys around me and the stuff that we're working on. We got a lot of love. We got a lot of support. We're doing good. This is something that irks me. If Big Dave died, if I walked out into the fucking street and got hit by a car, there would be waves of people jerking me off. Oh, he was so talented. He was so good. He did so many great things and blah, 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 blah. I wish he was still here. Well, I'm here right now, motherfucker. Like, you know, but that's the facts of it. That if I walked out in the street and got hit by a car, my fucking corpse would get jerked off way more than I ever do when I'm alive. And that sucks. And I'm not saying everybody should come jerk me off. If you don't fuck with what I do and you don't like what I do, cool. You know what I mean? I'm not trying to force everybody to like me or like my work. But the fact of the matter is there would be all of these posers coming out of the fucking woodwork to jerk me off and pretend that they loved me and all this kind of stuff if I died. And that is fucking garbage. And that's not just me. That's everybody. And it's not just us here in the net. It's you see it with musicians. You see it with actors. You see it with fucking everything. The moment one of these people croak, oh my God, they were so, why are they still here? But, well, jerk off like a few months ago, they were here and you weren't fucking with them. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah. Fuck. Well, I mean, we talked about it earlier. It happened in the Seattle scene, like of this like amazing movement of talent, these absolutely epical fucking rock stars and like amazing songwriters. Not many people in Seattle really gave two shits about them until they got written up in a UK music magazine, right? And then all of a sudden, people are like, oh, you know, they take an interest. It's like a prophet is a fucking stranger in his own land. It's just part of the human condition. Or maybe it's not, actually. You know what? I don't think it is. No, I take that back. I think that this is something that has been introduced. I think that, you know, if you go back to 1000 BC, people did give a shit about, you know, the songs of their people, about the, you know, their family sagas, about all the things that were close to them, about all the things that made them who they are. I think people did care about that at one point. And I think people wouldn't give a shit about what was going on, you know, 100 miles in any other direction. It's like, you know, this is what we're about. This is what we're doing. I am basically coterminous with my people, with my family, with what's close. I think this is something we've lost. I think this is something that's been taken from us. That's something that we need to get back. So in the little sort of microcosm of like what we're doing in our little scene, you know, I try to promote artists. You know, we publish some poets. Dave publishes amazing creative writers, left, right, and center. You know, we share music, and our scene is fucking cool. There's a lot of real talent here, and it's frustrating that people don't see it. So hopefully, you know, this has given guys some food for thought that maybe should look a little closer to home, because as far as I'm concerned, if we only looked to our thing, we could easily have at least music and literature pretty much covered. We don't really have a lot of film yet. We're getting there. But, you know, as far as art, you know, from music and the written word, we don't need to go anywhere else, right? And I think that's the way it should be. That's the way we should look at it.
Yeah. I've been I've been getting some pushback on this. I don't give a fuck anymore. I really, really don't. Current thingism is bread and circus. Dan Cap, our buddy Dan Cap from the Fergan, had a great post about here's what you can't control, here's what you can control. And this, like, everybody jerking off about. So I made a post. I was like, dude, like it wasn't even about the Israel, fight. It wasn't even about Ukraine or Russia. It wasn't about anything. It was just like, I was pretty much just saying, why would you make enemies and beef with somebody who is a possible friendly or an ally that's like right next to you? Why would you start a fight with your neighbor that's just like you and like make him your enemy over some shit that people are doing thousands of miles away that you know nothing about, that don't even like you, that take your money and don't like you? None of those people over there like you or give a fuck about you. None of them. And nothing you say, as you could get as mad as you want and shake your fist as hard as you want. You could read every detail that you think is true on the internet. You don't know what's true about that situation. You can never know what is true about that situation. And no matter how much you bitch and yell and moan and have these positions or whatever, none of them give a fuck about what you have to say. They don't know that you exist, and you have zero power in affecting that situation at all. So there's absolutely no reason to give a fuck about it outside of this is a gay hobby. It's a gay hobby. It's the worst hobby. It's not even a hobby that gets anything like it. It's not entertaining. It doesn't make you laugh. It's not good exercise. If you're going to have a hobby, at least like paint fucking miniatures or something. At least you get cool little statues and get good at painting. You get at least something out of that. Go hiking, go to lift, go fucking, do something, pick up an instrument, do something that gives you something in return. Become a fucking dude. Being it's literally worse than being like a Star Wars nerd. At least Star Wars nerds are like being entertained by their gay Star Wars movies. At least they're like having fun and getting pleasure out of it. You're not even getting pleasure out of like getting mad about Israel. You know what I mean? You're not even getting entertainment out of that. There's nothing good. It doesn't contribute to your health, your wealth, or your happiness. The only reason you do it is for masochistic catharsis and content creators that like have to do commentary on it and all this shit. I'm not shitting on anybody. I probably shouldn't say that. Probably shouldn't say what I'm about to say. But it's not good. And I'm sick of seeing it and hearing about it. And I don't give a fuck about it. And I think it's a stupid thing to give a fuck about.
But bro, how am I going to get my upcomies? How am I going to get that on Twitter?
Fuck Twitter.
Yeah. No, it's true. It's absolutely true. You need to build close to home, right? That's how things get done. That's how the world gets changed. It doesn't get changed because you argued someone in power into a position. That never happens. Not ever. So anyway, I think what we're doing here is, we're taking our own advice and trying to make that happen. And I would just like to see people take what we're doing and what other guys adjacent to us are doing a little bit more seriously. I think in time they will, hopefully before it's too late. So we've been lucky. We've been lucky that we've been able to actually, Dave and I, to carve out a little space in this thing and make a little difference. So
yeah. And I know
lots of artists out there deserve your attention too.
And I know you guys listen, like the culture dads here. I'm like preaching to the choir. I know that you guys understand all this. You feel this. If you didn't feel that kind of way, you wouldn't be here. Right. But it's like, it's from my perspective, it's like, it's frustrating. It's frustrating. Like maybe I should take my own advice and just like not even pay attention to the people that aren't paying attention and just say, fuck them and just focus on the dads here.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we've certainly got enough projects on the go, don't we? That's the thing is like I find myself spending way too much time on that. And I spend a lot less time than some people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I've probably said this before, you guys out there. And like I said, I'm preaching to the choir, and this is behind paywall, and the only people that are hearing me are the K dads. But dude, there's this like really incestuous kind of like horrible symbiosis that goes on between content creators and the audience. You know, they like, it's like the audience rewards only the worst content because that's what hypes them to comment and everything like that, and that communicates to the content creator that this is this is what I need to do in order to be successful. So he continues to do that. Meanwhile, it rots his soul out and sucks out everything that he loves about the world, and he gets more and more fucking miserable and like trashes his life more and more. And then it's just, it's like a fucking horrible downward spiral. It just sucks. It just sucks. And I know there's a few guys that are trapped in the current take cycle, the current thing, hot takes, Johnny hot take cycle, that are like fantastic musicians with beautiful singing voices, or wonderful poets that like played in awesome bands, or like painters that are just like fucking like world-class talents, and that they completely ignore it and do none of it because nobody gives a fuck when they post stuff like that. And that like, because these guys are my friends and they're good people, and it upsets me that there's, I don't know. I just think it sucks. I hate it. It blows.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing, is that a scene like Seattle or like, London in the 1960s and everything like that is, it seems like it's going in that direction, and nobody gives a shit until the world comes knocking. So you never know when that's going to happen.
And I know there's some creators that listen to our podcast. A lot of the culture dads out there, you guys got podcasts and all that stuff. Dog, you don't need that engagement and shit. Who cares? Collapse the shit. Do what you love and what you think is beautiful, and be generative and put that shit out in the world. That fucking Rush song, dude. The men who hold high places must be the ones who start to mold a new reality closer to the heart. That's you, motherfucker.
Sing from the heart. It's like that old Bill Hicks routine or whatever.
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about?
Hell yeah. It's not even a comedy routine. It's just him screaming what's in his guts.
Yeah, exactly.
And it was fire. That's probably his best fucking performance.
Oh, for sure it is. For sure. Yeah, go check that out if you haven't seen that. Bill Hicks, Sing from the Heart, or whatever it is. Something like that.
Yeah. Now that I pissed everybody off and you've said way too many things that I should have said, let's fucking close it out. We're on 3 hours here, Mr. Mike. Is there anything in closing that you'd like to say about grunge and all this kind of shit?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I would say, again, sort of like echoing what I said before, a little bit about how it's too pessimistic and it's too dark and it's too depressed and everything like that. Very interestingly, here we'll plug one of our boys right now. Our boy Frostgaz just wrote an article, and I read it today. It's about pessimism. And he says some very important things. Go check out Frostgaz's Substack, where he's basically saying that that pessimism, far from being something bad, can actually be a source of power. If you are one of our guys and you like the political shit that we like, and you have the worldview we do, and you want to say, oh, I get it. You want to have a positive worldview. You want to be life affirming. You don't want to be depressed all the time. But you also want to say, fuck pessimism. Well, you're going to need to get rid of Nietzsche. You're going to need to get rid of Spengler. You're going to need to get rid of Lovecraft. You need to get rid of all these guys that are absolutely indispensable. The fact is that the darkness is a source of our power. One of the most fundamental things that you take out of heathenry, especially when you really understand what's at the bottom of the theology, when it's at the bottom of all the lore and everything, is the fact that logos is not a thing. When you strip away everything, when you pull the curtain back, and you look at that woodcut where the guy's like, he's pushed reality to the side and he's peering beyond the veil, and he sees what's really at the bottom of reality. And it's all these like interlocking gears of order and everything. That is not what's at the bottom. At the bottom of reality is Ginunga Gap. It is the void. It is not love that makes the world go round. We love our folk. We love our people. We love our families. We love our folk. But there's something else that makes the world go round too. And that is the wolf's rage at being spurned, at being disrespected. It is the fuck you to the world that has rejected you, that has said, fuck you, fuck your people, you deserve to die. There is a wolf's rage coming out of alternative and grunge music that is not perfect, but it is the deepest howl of outrage against all of that, against a world that has said, fuck you. It is in turn looking at that and rejecting all of that. And I think that if that is pessimism, if that is depression, if that is, everything that people counter signal about the 90s, then I say, let's lean into that. Because I'm telling you, one of the things that motivates me to do what I do with Imperium is rage at what has been done to me, at what has been done to my family, and what has been done to my people. And I think that can be turned into something positive. So that's what I take out of grunge, and I think that's what I love about it.
That was fire, bub. That was fire. I don't want to add anything. I just want to end on that. So let's wrap it up here. Mr. Mike, thank you for showing me all your favorite stuff and this genre that you love so much, and kind of bringing me into your house and showing me, what you like about it. I appreciate it. I liked it. And I hope you guys out there liked it too. And if you like Culture Dads, you're listening now, you probably already signed up, but just in case you're not, make sure to go over to imperiumpress.org/podcast or culturedads.com and go get signed up to the Gumroad. I'm telling you guys, these hardback books are fucking based. They are excellent. Excellent. So go get yourself some of that stuff. And also, if you sign up just for the bottom tier, you get Culture Dads every single week. You can't beat it. You just can't beat it. What are you going to do? By the way, we got more stuff coming out as far as podcasts. You guys don't even, what me and Mike did, what we got working back behind scenes, behind the curtain that we're going to roll out up here in the coming months and coming years is going to be real big PP energy boss moves.
Hell yeah. Get excited. Get excited for this.
Yeah. Get yourself all sweaty and get all worked up. Because we're back.
We're going to have more to say about this in the next month or so. But believe you me, dads, it's going to be fucking big.
It's going to be based. So just be on the lookout. Stay frosty. Keep your eyes peeled, your ears open, because lots of great stuff's coming your guys' way. We appreciate you guys, man. You guys that fund this, that are signed up on the Gumroad and pay for this. You guys don't realize how important you are, because you are fueling the machine. You're like our army of guys that fill the war coffers for our efforts, and we appreciate you and we love you and thank you. And shout out to our God Emperor tier patrons. Mr. Mike, if you want to shout them out.
Yeah. Shout out to Kazilkum Cruiser. Shout out to Marvin from AFD. Mm-hmm. We got other guys that do not want to be named, but thank you to everyone at those tiers, and thank you to all you dads as well. Cannot thank you enough. Everything you do for us, you help us keep the lights on. You are the real engine behind what we do, so thank you for that.
Absolutely. So, hails and blessings and happy Halloween. I'll see you guys next time on Culture Dads, Age of Sword.